Jason and Chingel out of the hold of Mesco. Good snap, good hold, and the kick is blocked. Appalachian State has stunned the college football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports history.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Good morning, and a good morning to you and yours. Here we are on a Monday, up and at 'em, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Thom Brennaman. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. You can find us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. We always ask that you please hit the subscribe button to the show. You can also find us on Twitter, on Facebook, where this show is streaming on the Chatterbox Sports page. We also ask you flip the notification switch on. And if a podcast is more your thing, by all means, wherever you get them, search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, and you're dialed in. The first half was simply brutal. The Bengals had it all right there in front of them. First place in the division after Baltimore's loss to Cleveland on Saturday, playing a team that was boat raced last week by the 49ers and had a losing record for the season. And that's the best you got? Are you kidding? But, as the old saying goes, that's why they play two halves. I mean, in that first half, Burrow throws a pick on the first possession on yet another batted ball. They don't get another first down until the final drive of the first half. Meanwhile, Tom Brady's just picking this injured secondary apart. Bengals were down 17-0 before a field goal in the final minutes of the opening half. But my, oh my, did things change. Because as good as the Bucs were in the first half, as bad as the Bengals were in the first half, the script flips almost to the point of disbelief. You got to admit it now. Tampa Bay had 260 yards of offense, 17 points, and not a single turnover in the first 30 minutes. In the next 17 minutes, they had 50 yards of offense, no points, and 4 turnovers. The Bengals scored 24 points off of those turnovers and win their 6th straight game 34-23. Did you see the note on Tom Brady, by the way? He had an 89-0 record in home games when his team led by 17 points or more. Now, we told you, the Bengals had a chance to move all alone atop the division for the first time all year long. That's after Cleveland shuts down Tyler Huntley and the Ravens 13-3. I don't know about you. Go figure. This is in that go figure department. J.K. Dobbins gets 13 total carries for 125 yards. But that's all he got, 13 carries. So Cincinnati is in first place with 3 games to go in the regular season. Next up, a trip to New England. We'll get to them in a minute. That is Saturday, remember, Christmas Eve day at 1 o'clock. The Patriots are a game out of the final playoff spot in the AFC. This might have been the single most exciting weekend in the NFL that we have seen in years. Unbelievable games the entire weekend. 7 games were decided in the final 2 minutes of regulation or in overtime. Now, how about the Minnesota Vikings? They're down 33-0 against Indianapolis at halftime. They come back and win. It's the greatest comeback in the history of the National Football League. Then Saturday night in the snow in Buffalo, Josh Allen, it was impressive. 15 plays, 86 yards in the final minutes to beat Miami. And Miami showed up. I didn't think they would. Dolphins showed up. 32-29 the final. Allen throws 4 touchdown passes in the game. The Chiefs were extended into overtime by the lowly Texans. But Kansas City takes advantage of a fumble in overtime, win 30-24. It's Kansas City's 7th consecutive AFC West title. That's the second longest consecutively all time. Only Tom Brady's Patriots, one more, 11 in a row from 2009 to 2019. Now the Cowboys, with a win, had a chance to nail down a playoff spot. That was in Jacksonville, but the Jags get a game-tying field goal at the end of regulation, then win it in OT 40-34. Trevor Lawrence throws 4 touchdowns in the win. Don't look now, but with Tennessee's loss to the Chargers, Jacksonville a game out of first place. And by the way, thanks to the Giants win in D.C., the Cowboys did get that final playoff spot. Zach Wilson, meanwhile, throws for 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns, but it was not enough to beat the surging Lions. Detroit 7-7 with a 20-17 win. We call them the Fighting Chris Spielmans. They're a half game out of the final playoff spot with 3 to go. And do we have this play teed up?
We do.
I mean, I know many of you had to see this. Now, let me just tee this up for a second if you didn't. It's 24-24, okay? 3 seconds to go in regulation. Take a knee, go to overtime, right? Oh, no. New England's going to outsmart everybody, right? Greatest coach in the history of the NFL. Of that, it cannot be denied. But look at this. This is what happens. The final play of regulation. Remember now, the game is tied. Okay, Mac Jones is at quarterback. And they decide at the 45, we're going to try something kind of cute here. So they get a long run, time has expired, and now we're going to start flipping it around. Now let's throw it across the field. Whoop! Chandler Jones. Bye-bye. That's the way the game ends. The Raiders win the game on that play. Has anyone ever seen anything like that?
No.
I mean, seriously. It'd be one thing if your team is behind, right? But when you're tied and that's the way the game ends, I mean, Mac Jones is looking around going, what in the world is happening here? It's unbelievable.
Play it again, Casey. Play it one more time.
Can I play it with the audio?
Please.
Yeah.
Mac Hollins out on defense. He's all the way back. Stevenson
is anyone going
is inside the 30, flips it back. Stanford band nowhere in sight.
Uh-oh.
It's picked off.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. Chandler Jones takes it in and wins the game for the Raiders.
Casey McAllister, Paul Fritchner, good morning, men.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
How would you like to be a Patriots fan today? Now, you've been spoiled rotten, all the success, all the Super Bowls. So, that's fine. We know that. It's now old news. Can you imagine if they don't make the playoffs? And now they're on the outside looking in with 3 to go, and they know they got to play the Bengals this week. Can you imagine if you don't make the playoffs? Now, you can go back and dissect every play during the season, and there are no doubt dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of plays where you say, well, we make that play, we might have won that game, and we might be in. But can you imagine if that's the play that keeps you out of the playoffs?
So Jacoby Myers definitely thought that the Patriots were losing, right? And that's the only thing you can think is that he definitely thought the Patriots were losing. So I had a couple of questions. One, why are they lateraling in the first place? And 2, why is he throwing the ball back to Mac Jones? In what world did he think that Mac Jones was the person 20 yards behind where he was that was going to then reverse the field and get all the way around the edge on the other side? Where did he think in any scenario that was a good – even if you want to lateral it, there were like 3 Patriots that were closer to the play than Mac Jones was. There was no scenario where that play, even if the Patriots were losing, was the right play. I just have no idea what he was doing. I don't think anybody does, but No clue.
Yeah, I mean, I would not want to be a Patriots fan right now. I mean, I am down bad if I'm a Patriots fan. I'm already coughing nails, 6 feet under. My season's over. You lost to the Raiders like that?
And they dominated the second half of that game. I mean, New England fell behind, and then they started playing quite well, and the wheels fall off. I mean, it's stunning. One other play you have to at least look at for entertainment value because, I don't know if the guy's going to be a great quarterback, a mediocre quarterback, a less than mediocre quarterback. I have no idea. But the single most exciting quarterback in the NFL is Justin Fields. I mean, this guy is I'm not saying he's a great quarterback, so don't anybody go off the reservation here. Brandon turned around like I just said he's better than Joe Burrow. It's not what I said. What I said is he's the most exciting quarterback in the NFL. When the ball touches his hands, you have no idea what's going to happen.
Well, that's true.
Watch this play. This is insane.
Turn the sound on.
Fields moves in the pocket and gets away. Justin Fields takes off, turns a sack into a big gain and a first down. Justin Fields, otherworldly, stays in, steps out at the 9. Out of bounds inside the.
I mean, that's just insane.
That is really insane.
I mean, that is unbelievable. He ended up stepping out of bounds, they said. But look at this. Surrounded, nowhere to go. Eagles all over him. Turns on the Jets. Off to the sideline. Breaks a tackle there. 3, 4, 5 guys around him. Nope. Spin. Should have been 6. They should have just given him a touchdown.
He literally has to do everything by himself.
He does. I mean, that's why it's unfair of people out there to make any kind of a judgment yet on Justin Fields because that offensive line, I mean, you just saw it. The second he catches a ball out of shotgun, and it's almost every play, the second, look at the graphic. Put that up.
Here, I'm going to put it up.
This is in the second quarter. 11 dropbacks. He had been sacked 3 times and knocked down 3 times. So 6 of the 11, he's getting killed. That looked like the Bengals the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
But that's every week for the Bears.
And he's mobile. Imagine how much worse it would be if he wasn't.
Oh, yeah, there's no question. The World Cup. Now, from people who know the history of the sport, I'm not one of those people. But the World Cup finale yesterday is being talked about and considered to be the greatest title game of all time. After 17 years with the Argentinian national team, Messi, you only say his name. You don't have to say the first name or the last name. You just say Messi, right? They win the World Cup with a penalty shot decision over the reigning champions, the French. Messi said afterwards he is not retiring, and not since Brazil in 2002 has a South American team lifted the championship trophy, and we all believe that's where the best soccer in the world is played, oftentimes.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable finish. That last hour, the last 20 minutes of regulation, extra time, and then penalties, that last hour was just
unbelievable.
I mean, I jokingly tweeted something out. If you follow me on Twitter, I jokingly tweeted a meme out. But, like, in all seriousness, I will not forget for a long time that one. I mean, that's a top sporting moment that anybody who watched that will remember, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's why you watch soccer for games like
man.
that. That game, unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. And that cat, I don't know how you pronounce his name for France.
Mbappe.
That dude's unbelievable.
It was funny. I saw a video afterwards. Some guy, some soccer fan, put a video out and goes, "Well, if this was their first time watching soccer, just stop. Just stop now. Just stop while you're ahead because it doesn't get better than that."
Yeah, the one, I think it was their third goal for France. That is like the most unbelievable set of passes and plays that were made for Mbappe to make that final goal. The ball doesn't even hit the ground. He kicks it in air. That's how incredible this game was. Like, it was just mind-blowing.
Well, the third was Mbappe's penalty in extra time.
Yeah.
The second one,
the
one that
sorry.
equalized in like the 89th minute was unbelievable. I mean, they scored 2 goals in a minute and 33 seconds.
Yep.
I
After falling behind 2-0.
Yeah.
So,
Fantastic.
Congratulations. I'm sure that it is a party like you've never seen in Argentina.
But even more so than that, how about the Argentinian goalie? His save in like the 123rd minute, because that's a winner. If that finds the back of the net, he kicks his leg out, saves it, and then goes into the penalties and saves 2. Well, one save, the other one he missed. He went wide of the net. But still, I mean, for as well as Messi played, scoring 2 goals in the final, Mbappe scores 3 goals in the final. I mean, for as well as those 2 guys played, the goalie, man.
Well, the goalie is the most pressurized position in all of sports where you have a goalie and you're playing at the highest level. I mean, the pressure is mind-boggling for the goalie. You know, position players run around out there, and, if you catch one, you get a header in the net, or you're able to get a breakaway, you pass. It's a borderline offside call. There was one of those late in the game yesterday. You got to bang it in. But for the goalie, you give them up, and it's all they talk about. When you stop them, it'll be rare that they say anything about you. They'll talk about all the offensive players. That's the nature of the game.
It is.
Right.
It's the nature of the game. And I know all about it. I mean, on a much smaller scale, but as a father of a goalie in lacrosse, if your team's expected to win the championship, and his high school is the state championship, you don't start the year every year thinking, we're going to win our conference, we're going to win our division. That's not it. And that's not it with Argentina. That's not it with France in soccer. That's not it with certain teams in hockey. You're thinking the season begins, we went to win the fill in the blank, the whole thing. And the pressure on a goalie is mind-boggling. College football, oh boy. UC loses to Louisville badly in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. That was on Saturday, 24-7. The offense was just putrid. No other way to describe it. 38 rushes, 44 yards on 38 rushing attempts. 2 for 13 on third down. Evan Prater, 7 of 17 for 83 yards and a touchdown. Bearcats finished 9-4 on the year, and the Big 12 is on deck.
Oh, boy.
Ooh. Miami dropped a tough one. They played well. I give it up to Coach Martin and the Red Hawks. They lose in the Bahamas Bowl to UAB 24-20. They finished 6-7. In college basketball, UC beat Louisville 78-60 over the weekend. Cats 8-4. Next up, Detroit Mercy on the 21st this week. And Xavier opens Big East Conference play. 102-89, a win on the road at Georgetown. The Muskies host Seton Hall, who's 7-5 on the year, at the Centos Center tomorrow night. All right, we've got them by the hundreds, if not thousands.
Seth Pryor, UK basketball is a mess. Tom, I don't know if you've been following, but Kentucky basketball is an absolute disaster this year. They're 7-3 on the year, but they're 1-3 against power conference teams, and they're 4-13 in their last 17 games against ranked teams. Their offense is terrible. They scored 53 points against UCLA. You're fighting Mick Cronin's.
Well, I made the comment. I mean, I was sitting there with a buddy of mine who's a Kentucky grad. UCLA is for real. They've got experience. They've got depth. They are unbelievably well coached. Cronin's a great coach. And I'd watch them come tournament time if they stay healthy.
UCLA?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
They're poised for another deep run.
Well, the other thing, too, is they're experienced. I mean,
That's
look
what
at
I mean.
Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez. They were both on that Final Four team a couple of years ago. So they've been there and they've done that.
Yep. All right, coming up on the program today, we have Brian Billick to talk all that is the National Football League. There are a lot of big topics out there, some things going on. You know, the one that I find interesting is the Jets thing. I mean, Wilson, who was awful, was pretty good yesterday. Throws for over 300, couple of touchdowns. But Mike White is their guy. He couldn't go. And, got hurt, got killed the week before against Buffalo, kept coming back. But if you're the head coach, what do you do? If White is back healthy and you were winning games with him, But now the Wilson guy is coming off a decent game. Do you give it back to White? And what about the Lions?
Oh, baby.
And what about the Bengals? I think there's a lot of good, and I think there are some questions. And I don't want to hear the two words together. And those two words are last year. This is a different year. It's a new year. They're a better team this year than they were last year. Does that mean they're going to go to the Super Bowl again? Of course not. Does that mean they're going to win the Super Bowl? Of course not. Are they one of the top 3 or 4 contending teams to win the Super Bowl right now? Without a doubt. You got Philadelphia, you got the Niners, you got the Bills, you got the Chiefs, and you got the Bengals in no particular order. Those are the 5 teams right now. Not to say somebody else outside of that box can't win it. But right now, and I exclude the Cowboys, because I continue to say that Dak Prescott is not going to win the big one. I'm convinced of it. I think they will find a way to screw the thing up. Coaching decisions, penalties, whole 9 yards. So you got the Bengals in that group. And look, the Ravens are going to get Lamar Jackson back. But where will they be when they get Lamar Jackson back? Because Huntley did not look good. Your Cleveland Browns, Casey. The team you say stinks. You might want to clarify that and never utter those words again, just based on, if nothing else, the favor they did you and all Bengals fans on Saturday.
Well, at least they don't smell revolting now. They just kind of stink. But they still stink. You know, I am happy that they won against the Ravens. And my one take that I've been hammering down looks really bad about Tyler Huntley. But the team itself, the Ravens, is so dependent on Lamar Jackson and his play in order to be successful that it is not sustainable. That's the same thing I'm going to say about the Bills later on. The Bills have a little bit more structure. They've got a little bit more, like they've got Diggs who could take over a game. They had Von Miller who could take over a game.
But he's out for the year. And now so much of the Ravens' game plan is for Lamar to just pop off. And if he doesn't, they struggle. And it's a close game. And the coaching staff is good enough to push them over the top. But if they get into these matches with like Kansas City or the Bills, which they haven't played either of those teams yet, I don't think they win. I think if they play the Bengals now, I don't think they win. And we'll see how Lamar does after the fact. I mean, it was a sprain, right, on his right knee or something like that.
It was a knee sprain, yep.
Yeah, those are tricky.
There's no question about it. All right, listen, we're going to talk more about the Bengals game. We're going to do our picks early, so we're going to review those picks over the weekend coming up here, okay? And then we'll talk about the Bengals, and we'll roll right that into Brian Billick and Dan Hoard. You're watching Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Am I throwing it to you guys, or are we going to a break?
First break, we're going to UDF.
All right, we're going to UDF. Here you go.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, and if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Sweeney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Sweeney, the original used car superstore.
All right. He's walking right in right here.
We're back. Thom, where are we at here with KC and the stink list? Do we need an updated stink list today, or is that?
We always assume we're going to get one, but when I asked him the question before the show started if he had one updated, he said no. So what am I supposed to do?
Well, I don't mean to throw you under the bus here, Casey. I'm not. If there's one thing we can't do, it's rush art. So we're not gonna rush the stink list.
So it's not
not ready.
It will be ready.
Okay.
It'll be ready within the show.
Okay. All right. Thom, how much did you enjoy the Bengals game yesterday?
I mean, I loved it, but I got to tell you, I mean, look, the first half, and we were talking about this beforehand, okay? And this is why I said I don't want to hear about last year, because last year is old news. Different team, different opponents, the whole 9 yards. Just because you came back and beat Kansas City last year, down 17-3, I think it was, just because you did it last year doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it this year. I am convinced if they fall behind a good team, and there are only so many good teams. So, I mean, if you fell behind Baltimore 17-3, I think you can come back and win. You fall behind Buffalo 17-3, it ain't happening. They're not turning the ball over 4 times in 17 minutes. It's just not happening. So, look, this has been an MO of the Bengals in the last couple of years. There's a reason why they have to come back and win all the time, right? Because they're not playing well early in games. That's a fact. Now, a lot of you on the chat, I mean, you've gone off the reservation completely saying the Bengals would blow out the Eagles. And I mean, come on. Maybe they would. And I'm all in. They've won 6 in a row. They're in first place for the first time all year long. And what are they? They're 10-2 since starting the year, 0-2. So they're on a remarkable run, and we continue to get back, fellas. The one thing I will say, the 2 things I will say. Number 1. Their depth is mind-boggling. And we've discussed this on this show many, many times, and the credit goes to Duke Tobin and all the player personnel people, the coaching staff. Trey Flowers was a guy, and be honest, he's yet another example of guys that, you get down on, you see him in a game, and you're like, oh, my God, what's he doing in there? Well, you've already lost to Wouzier. Hilton didn't play yesterday. You get other guys hurt during the game. Sam Hubbard gets hurt. Asai steps up. They didn't have Hendrickson. And yet, they find a way to win a game like they did yesterday. So their depth is mind-boggling. And I will give the coaching staff credit as far as whatever it is they're doing at halftime to get things turned around. Because they have proven they start slow, and they find a way to get it going, and they do play better in the second half. Now, Casey, you are, like many in our chat right now, blindly walking around as though the Bengals are unbeatable.
Oh, well.
You're right there with them, Case. Come on. It's all right. Nothing wrong with it. It's part of being a fan. But would you want to take your chances falling behind Buffalo 17-3?
Yeah, sure. I think that actually might be a benefit for us.
Yes.
Yes.
Not only is it good, it's a benefit.
You guys have lost.
Yes.
You guys have honestly now, it's one thing to be a homer show. You guys have absolutely lost your mind.
Let me explain my
I got people in here,
take.
and this is what's wrong. This is what's wrong with society. I got Everett and some other guys saying I'm a Bengals hater. That is the furthest thing from the truth on the planet. I just called Duke Tobin a little while ago. I'm thrilled at the way they're playing. I think they got a hell of a team. I think they got a team that can win the Super Bowl. But nobody in their right mind is going to sit here and tell me they feel good if they fell behind the Buffalo Bills 17-3.
Well, let me explain my take. Will you let me do that?
Please.
Okay. So the reason why it'll benefit the Bengals is because everyone still doubts us, Tom. The Bills don't think we're good. They think we're just some Joe Schmo team. Well,
who are you? First of all, let me, as you go through this, and I'll give you all the time you want. Who in the world is saying that the Bengals are some Joe Schmo team? Jim Nantz said yesterday that I hear Who Day chants in the stands. Who Day? They are a force.
And
Those were the words of Jim Nantz.
And did you hear Tony Romo?
Hello, friend.
Oh, he's a little Brady. No, he's Joe Burrow. Give him his due credit. Oh, I got a lot to say about Tony Romo, but we'll get on to that much later. This team is still doubted. Tom Brady even said before this game, "Oh, they've got a decent defense. They're all right." And then he turns it over 4 times. Yes, I get it. One of them was a bad handoff, but there's 3. There's 2 interceptions. There's 1 forced fumble. That team heard it loud and clear, woke up, came ready to play, hit him straight in the mouth. The exact same thing can happen in any given game, right? But the Bengals thrive in the second half, regardless of their situation. I don't know what it is. I don't know what sort of magic that Anarumo puts on all the Bengals players. I don't know what they do offensively to change so much. But this team thrives with adversity. It thrives in second halves. And if the Bills go up 17-3 in any situation, they think they've got that game sealed because they're the Bills.
I don't think Sean McDermott allows that to happen.
I got to be honest. I'm not on the train anymore that people doubt the Bengals. I think people very much respect the Bengals. I think we're beyond that.
Yeah.
And maybe because we're in this ecosystem in Cincinnati, that's where we are because that's what we want to hear. But I think nationally when you read things or when you hear things, I mean, I think the Bengals are getting all of the credit in the world that they deserve nationally. I don't think that they're getting slighted anymore. I think when you beat the Chiefs 3 times in a year, when you're ripping off a 6-game winning streak over competitive, good teams, I do think that the Bengals are getting every bit the due that they are deserved. It was very bizarre, though, yesterday hearing some of the things that Tony Romo was saying on the air. And I was not really I don't want to say I'm like a Romo hater, but I don't really – the one thing that I find weird just like as broadcasting, and I'd love to hear your thought, Tom, he defers to Jim Nantz a lot in really big spots. He'll ask Jim, what do you think, Jim? Should they go for it here? Tony, you're the analyst. It's Jim setting you up. Jim is teeing you up to ask those questions. I didn't really understand what Tony was trying to say it 3 or 4 times during the game yesterday. I don't think necessarily he's like a hater or anything.
But I think that what's happened is when Romo started, okay, when he first came on the scene, and he's a likable guy. I mean, you know, he's not some egomaniac. I've met him a number of times when he was a player. I've not talked to him since he became a broadcaster, but when I would do Cowboys games and he was a quarterback, sit down and meet with him. Very likable, approachable, Midwest guy. You know, grew up in Wisconsin, played at Eastern Illinois, whatever it was. I mean, he's a regular guy. But, I mean, look, if he's CBS's number 1 guy, he is not in the same galaxy with Aikman and Collinsworth.
No.
Those guys are on it. They're prepared. They know people's names, right? Instead of just Lou or some defensive coordinator or what. I mean, they know it's Lou Anarumo. Boom, just like that. And I sat there at times yesterday, and everybody got all excited when he first showed up on the scene, and he's predicting plays, and some of them hit. They're not talking about the ones that he would predict and he would miss. And look, I've been in the broadcast, and I shared with Casey before the game. One of the parts of being a broadcaster on the NFL, where you're going in and doing teams' names and teams you never see before, every single fan on both sides at the end of the game thinks you hate their team and you're rooting against them. And as I said to Casey, the only thing you care about when you show up doing those games, one, you do a great job, you're prepared, and number two, whenever your plane leaves, you want to be on it and not delayed. That's all you care about.
But if it comes across, sorry, Casey, I don't mean to cut you off, but I got a direct question here for Thom on this. If you see feedback after the game that from both sides that you hate their team, isn't that exactly what you want? To me as a broadcaster, that would be exactly what I want. If the Bengals fans say that I hate their team and the Bucs fans say that I hate their team, that tells me I'm playing it straight down the middle. That's how I interpret that. I don't know about you, Thom, but that's how I would interpret I would take that as a good thing.
Yeah. What drives me insane is the prediction of the play while it's happening. Oh, that hit off the ground. Well, clearly it wasn't. That was a great play by Pratt. Or it'll be like, oh, that wasn't a fumble. Brady was definitely down, and it was clearly a fumble. It's like he wants these scenarios to clearly happen, that he's saying it and he's hoping it'll happen before the play is even done or before he even actually has a chance to see it. Right? I mean, that is what drives me insane, is you can tell by the way he's trying to narrate the game in a direction that is favored towards Tampa. Was he not?
I don't know.
He did it multiple times.
Listen, Casey. He's not.
He doesn't care who wins.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. And look, Emperor inside the chat, this is the bottom line on so many different things. But the bottom line is simply this. You will start getting that kind of quote-unquote respect when you win a Super Bowl. The Bengals franchise has never won a Super Bowl. And until you win one, there are going to be people out there that are going to, if for lack of a better term, defer a little bit to the guys that have won it. And yesterday, Burrow right now is a better player than Tom Brady. Of that, there is no debate whatsoever. None at all. But Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowl rings.
True.
7. So, the same thing happens with Hall of Fame voting for players. That's why guys like Kenny Anderson and Ken Riley and some other guys are not in the Hall of Fame. Their team never won a Super Bowl. And it happens inside a broadcast. I mean, there are 2 stories that have to be told there if you're sitting in the booth. And we're spending way too much time talking about the broadcasters instead of the game. But there are 2 stories that need to be told there. You have to present the Bengals story. Joe Burrow. All these guys that are hurt. They've won 6 in a row. They're knocking on the door for a number 1 seed. How can they get there? Those are questions that as a broadcaster, you have to lay out all those things for the people watching at home. You also have to watch out and lay out the other side, the other team they're playing. This is Tom Brady. Are we getting near the end? The Buccaneers are still in first place. Right now, they'd play Dallas in a playoff game. Could they beat Dallas? Nance asking Romo these questions during the game. You have to lay these things out for the entirety of your audience. This is a national game going to 90-something% of the country. They can't sit there and talk about the Bengals for the last 25 minutes of the broadcast and talk about the Bengals only. They can't do it.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking them to let whatever's called on the field be what you talk about. Don't go into the prediction business. That's not what we want. We don't want you to sit there and go, oh, that wasn't a fumble. Oh, that wasn't an interception. We want you to say, oh, they called an interception on the field. Let's take a closer look at it. I don't know, Jim. No, that's not what he does. regardless, let's move on. I'm tired of talking about him. He drives me nuts. Everyone thinks the same thing.
Okay. Quick note here before we move on too quickly. Just to make sure that you like the video, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. You can find this show in podcast form, everything like that. Just search Off the Bench or Chatterbox Sports on any podcast network. But if you like the video, helps the channel out. No, we got some big numbers in here today. Tom, go ahead.
All right, fellas, are we going to jump in our picks right now?
Yeah, we can.
I want to spend about 10 minutes talking about the Bengals game more in depth.
Yeah.
We need to talk more about the Bengals. We talked way too long about the broadcast.
What would you guys like to talk about?
Well, I want to talk about the defense because it's a tale of two different halves to me.
Yep.
And there's questions and answers, but first half, miserable. Couldn't stop anything.
Except I will say this. They always seem to get it done in the red zone.
They do.
They'll find a way. They won't stop you every time. But that's been Lou Anarumo, one of his primary talking points to that defense. 20 to the 20, they get their yards, But when the other team gets inside the red zone, and they scored a couple of touchdowns yesterday early, but they also stopped them a couple of times.
Yeah.
So, okay, go ahead.
I thought our defense just showed why they're a championship caliber defense. The depth there is unmatched. I mean, Osai was getting to the quarterback. We were wondering when that was going to happen. He showed up big, was pressuring him. I'm not sure if he was the cause of the pressure that led to the forced fumble, but he was definitely a factor in pressuring, at least in the second half. And it always just seems like Lou Anarumo finds, like I said, the magic. I don't know how he does it, but with everyone hurt, even Hubbard got hurt.
Yep.
Like it just doesn't matter. CTB goes down, and it's like, man, we're down to the bottom of the barrel. We're just barely scraping by, and we're still getting interceptions, fumbles, stops. It doesn't matter what it is. And something that hasn't really happened all year happened yesterday, and that was the amount of turnovers, the amount of just taking the ball away. We just don't really take the ball away. That's not what the Bengals are known for. They're known for stopping you on third down, but it just didn't matter yesterday. It was just like, we're going to get that ball. I mean, did you see, even like I said before, the Pratt play? I mean, he's got it one-handed under, like he just.
That's a great play. Great play. Now, I will say this, and tell me if you guys agree.
Okay.
The single biggest turning point of the game was a fake punt.
Yeah.
It's 17-3. Tampa Bay gets the ball to start the second half. They're ahead 17-3. They have dominated this game in every way imaginable. At this point, they still have not turned the ball over yet. On fourth down, and, you know, look, one of my favorite all-time Bengals players for what he did on the field, I thought he was so grossly underused here as a player, was Giovanni Bernard. A hell of a player and top-shelf first-class guy all the way. Now, he's the guy in between the snapper and the punter, okay? And he said afterwards there was miscommunication on the play. It was fourth down and a yard. Todd Bowles said afterwards, if that play is handled cleanly, it's a 5-yard gain, they get a first down, and we have no idea what would have happened after that. But to even think about a fake punt, in my opinion, when you're ahead 17-3, was one of the greatest gifts you could ever ask for, because the entire complexion of that game changed on that single play. If they punt it 45 yards, whatever it is, Bengals are starting to drive down 17-3 inside their own 20.
That's, again, one of those plays where when you have a quarterback like Tom Brady, why don't you just go for it? If you know you're going to go for it, just do it. Don't fake that. Just do it. If you've made up your mind, you're going to go for it. A lot of these times, these coaches try to run the trick play. You saw it in Ohio State and Michigan a few weeks ago. Just go for it. I mean, granted, in the Ohio State game, it would have worked by a long shot. I don't know how well this one would have worked. I didn't see a better angle on it. But Oh man, to me, if you've made up your mind as a coaching staff that you want to go for it on 4th down inside your own territory like that, Paul Dehner Jr. tweeted out after the third quarter was over, every single play in the third quarter was ran in the Bucs side of the field. That's incredible. When was the last time you've ever seen something like that?
Well, I've never seen 4 turnovers that fast in my life. Well, you had 2 picks and 2 fumbles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know things are going your way, even on that play, and I don't know what Burrow is doing on the one play where he's running 30 yards back behind the line of scrimmage and takes a sack.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder.
And they get the holding call, defensive holding call. Now, there were a lot of missed calls in that game. The one play where Chase gets hit in the face as the ball's coming in, and I don't know how in the world you miss that call. But look, you make your own breaks, and Brady is just, it's hard to watch.
I'm not going to sit here and defend that one Burrow play, but I wonder if he saw the flag and knew it was a free play.
Well, I don't know if anybody asked him about that. I did not see that.
I don't know. But regardless, the defense is the reason why we won last night. I don't think that's up for debate. I mean, they literally, like you said, every play on the third quarter was on Tampa Bay's side.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And I always hate the arguments too, Tom, where you get into it and you say, "Oh, the offense didn't really have to do anything. So what? That's just the opportunities that were presented in front of them." It's like when people say, "Well, you haven't beaten anybody." Well, in the NFL, you're not changing your schedule. You just play the teams in front of you. And when you start hearing people say, "Oh, they just had to drive the short field. They only had to drive 30 yards in the third quarter and score a couple of touchdowns." Well, that's because the complementary part of the team, the defense, did their job to create turnovers. So the fact that Joe Burrow only had to drive 30 yards was because the better half of your team at that point in the game right there did its job. So I just think that that's a lazy argument sometimes that you see from people. I think it might just be frustrated fans too, but I get tired of hearing it.
Well, people have a reason to be excited because, as I said earlier, I don't think there's any debate whatsoever. Now, look, I don't know what the injury situation is going to be. And by the way, give it up to Tyler Boyd for getting out there and playing yesterday. Higgins with a hamstring, he was out there, made an unbelievable catch, by the way, on that. Is that a 2-point conversion? I can't remember, or a touchdown. That ball right over the middle, and he just reaches out, and those hands of his, it's like he has 9 fingers on each hand. It's just insane the way that guy catches the ball. But Boyd, gamer. And we said he was a gamer. He left the game the week before. We said if it was a playoff game, they'd shoot that thing up and put him in there, and he was going to play. And I don't know if they shot anything up or not, but he was out there, and probably a good chance. And he was out there playing, and you give it up to the guy. Pratt has been an outstanding player. He said a few things last week, which we didn't get into a lot, about wanting to be on the field more. Said he's a 3-down linebacker. And he was getting taken out in certain situations. I did not think Logan Wilson had a good game yesterday at all. Not at all.
Didn't he have like 15 tackles?
I don't care how many tackles he had. That's fine. He goes out there and he's going to. Linebackers, if you're in on 3 downs, you should get a lot of tackles every game. But I just thought there were times yesterday where he was not as sharp as he normally is. But Pratt has been fantastic. Eli Apple has played really well for this team. And the thing I love about Apple is, man, he just keeps on running that mouth. And he's not afraid of anybody. You know what I mean? He's, he might get burned. And he might get burned a second time. And he might get burned a third time. But he is going to keep on coming at you. And so I say kudos to Apple. I don't know how long he's going to be here. Bengals have big decisions to make at the end of the year on guys like Bates, Pratt, Apple, among many others. They got some big decisions to make. But that's for another day and another time. They have to get guys back, though, if they truly are going to contend for the Super Bowl. Because as things went yesterday, and let's be honest, okay? Let's be completely honest. In many ways, they were gifted that game. I'm not saying they didn't go out and win it, but they were handed. Back to what just Paul said. When you have every play in the quarter that's played at the Tampa Bay end of the field, that's being gifted. 4 turnovers in 17 minutes, okay? I do not want to line up and have to play in a meaningful game, a playoff game, without Hilton, without Hurst, without Hubbard, without Hendrickson, without fill in the blank. Right? Nobody
I agree.
does. So if you're gonna win the whole thing, you got to get the horses back on the field. All right, let's get to picks.
Okay.
Because we got Brian Billick coming up, and he'll have a lot to say, I'm sure, about Baltimore. He still pays a lot of attention to that team that he won a Super Bowl as their head coach, and what's going on there. Because their defense is great, but their offense is just brutal.
And this will give us a good chance to talk about some of these games we haven't talked about yet. Let's throw the picks record up here for everybody that hasn't followed us all season. It's coming right down to the wire. 87 and 66. Casey and I tied right at the top. Tom, you're right on our tail. But this is the record going into the weekend. And then we're going to start it off with the Ravens and the Browns. We all picked the Ravens, Tom, and we all got burnt. We said we weren't going to pick the Browns.
I said I was going to flip.
You
and
did.
I should have flipped.
You did.
Because I thought the Browns were going to win that game.
They still stink.
Okay.
All right, next one up. Dolphins and Bills. Bills won, but they didn't cover.
That was a hell of a game.
It
was
a good game.
I mean, the whole scene, crowd, that is such an unbelievable place to watch a game in Buffalo. Their fans are just unbelievable. And
Miami's feisty, too.
What's that?
Miami's feisty.
You know, Miami showed up. I mean, I made a joke about them and their nice little teal and orange uniforms and, look like, a lollipop or an ice cream, something when they show up in cold weather. But they showed up. They looked pretty good. But all of a sudden, that's not a slam dunk. The Dolphins are going to be in the playoffs.
Nope.
No.
They've lost 3 in a row. Okay, we move on.
All right, next one. The Fighting Chris Spielmans.
The Fighting Chris Spielmans.
Motor City Dan Campbell getting it done.
Started 1-6 and then 6-1. A half game back. Their issue is going to be this. Now, Seattle's going to lose again because they've got to play Kansas City and a couple of other teams. They're going to lose again. The Commanders are probably going to lose again. So the Fighting Chris Spielmans, if they went out, they're in.
They're in. And if you were watching Box Lunch, you would have known. We put money on the Jags to make the playoffs. They're 1 game back. We'll get to that later. And the Lions.
Where were the odds on the Lions? Do you remember? I think it was like plus 1,000.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Something
plus 1,000 or plus 700. And then that would be the reverse for Jags.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I love some of these guys we have in the chat.
Chat's popping off today.
I mean, Sir Boy Wonder 513 and Zachary, Seattle will beat Kansas City. Now, is there a chance? Of course there's a chance. I mean, you put the guys against one another and you kick it off in 60 minutes, you see what happens. Come on. Go ahead.
Well, the Texans almost beat the Chiefs yesterday.
I understand. Look, you're going to have games where you have a little bit of a letdown. I mean, hell, the Bengals had a letdown and a half. You're going to have games, Bottom line is they forced the fumble on the run in overtime, and then McKinnon runs it in and throws his helmet. I don't know if that thing landed in the stands or what happened.
All right.
Next what else we got?
Sunday Night Football.
G-Men. Dayball.
And there's a bit
How
of
about
controversy.
that guy walking around the way he looks on the sideline? Did you see him last night?
Just stalking around.
Had the hoodie up.
I love Brian Daboll, man. I loved him in Buffalo. I love him now in New York. It's the best.
Have you seen the controversy though? At the end of the game, that touchdown that got called back for illegal formation. You can see the receiver check with the ref.
Yep.
And the ref gives him the thumbs up.
Yep.
And then he throws the flag as soon as they call the play.
Well, even more so than that was the pass interference on the last play. Because, that was pass interference on the last play. They brought in Mike Pereira, and Mike's like, yeah, Mike, Chris, that was pass interference. Yeah, man.
No, that wasn't Pereira on NBC.
What?
No, Pereira's on Fox.
Oh, yeah. Who was it then?
I don't know.
Terry McAulay.
Terry McAulay. Yeah,
Terry
no,
McAulay.
that's CBS.
Oh, I went 0 for 2. Who's
I think it's,
I'm looking at him. I watched the whole segment.
No, Sterator's on CBS. So McAulay. Yeah,
It is
I think
Terry
you're right.
McAulay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And what did he say? It was a
Oh,
penalty
yeah.
or
He
no?
was. He came on in the nicest Terry McAulay way possible. Yeah, guys, that's pass interference right there.
Yeah, they were not happy. Not happy at all. They being the Commanders and Ron Rivera after the game.
All right.
Comments about the officiating.
Last NFL game before we get into our college recap.
Who day?
Bengalis.
Hey, Casey and I, 2-0 when we sing. It's okay. Maybe.
We'll wait till Friday. You can sing again.
All right. Perfect.
New England will be played, the Bengals at New England. And again, to remind everybody, there will be 3 games on Christmas Day. I just don't like it. I have to say. That's the NBA saying, let them do their thing on Christmas Day, whatever it is. They should have moved every game in the NFL next week to Christmas Eve Day. Shouldn't be playing Christmas Day.
Hear the Bengals growling.
Well, you better just wait, fellas. You better wait till Friday. All right. On to the college game we go. And Paul again separating himself from the pack. Goes with the Red Hawks.
Red Hawks. Jock.
You know what? That game, and I don't know how much you watched of it, but I watched very little. But that fumble by the UA guy on the punt changed everything.
Yeah. We had it on here in the office in the background. We weren't listening to it, but we had the game on the TV, and it felt like every time we looked up, something was going on. And Miami, they stayed in it to their credit. They had a chance, but they covered the 11. That's what mattered to us.
That's right.
All right. Next one up. The Roadrunners and the Trojans.
You go with Troy. I mean, I can't believe I took UTSA, but I did, and so did Casey. LL Dub for Paul. Paul is on a good run here.
A couple of early losses for Troy, and then they got it rolling the rest of the year. I liked it.
Well, they both went in with 10-game win streaks in that game, if I recall.
All right, and then it all comes to a crashing halt right here.
God, were they bad.
That was terrible.
I mean, and I'll be the first guy to admit, I was wondering if they were going to get Prater into some situational series during the season. Ben Bryant was pretty good. He was pretty good.
Yeah.
Because this offense, and I know they had some guys declare for the draft, and believe me, I get it. And it was a tough spot for Kerry Combs to be in. You're trying to hold everything together. Guys transferring, guys hurt. Quarterback making only his second start. Staff gone, leaving with Fickle, a lot of them. And but boy, oh boy, oh boy. Satterfield better come in here and work some magic. Because next year, walking into the Big 12, brother, there are no layups anymore.
Nope.
I mean, this is a critical time for the University of Cincinnati football program, to say the least. This time a year ago, we were talking about a team cracking through into the college football playoff. And now all of a sudden, the man who put all that together is long gone, and Luke Fickle. And I wish Satterfield nothing but the best. But boy, oh boy, they better recruit and get some players in there. And maybe Prater turns out to be the next Des Ridder. I have no idea. But they had all those guys back on the offensive line this year. All 5 starters from a year ago, if I remember right? They lost a lot in the secondary. Still went 9-4. Nothing wrong with that. But do you think it was 9-4 if they're playing in the Big 12? No chance. All right.
It was frustrating, too, because if you've been watching the show, we've been fading UC all year on the spread. They just haven't been able to cover spreads that much this year. And I gave them a shot in the bowl game. I thought, without Malik Cunningham playing – that was brutal.
Tough.
That's tough. All right, on to the next.
I
took a shot here, and boy, did I swing and miss.
Yes, you did, and that was ugly.
That was a layup for Oregon State. Bad pick.
Tell you, Oregon State's got a nice team. They really do. They got a nice team. And they just re-up with their coach on a new contract. Good for them. All right.
Couple more here. Fresno State.
Fresno!
All over Wazoo. All over them.
Yeah, not a good pick by me. I was just trying to be different, trying to get a quick one on you guys, and same thing with the next one too.
All right, Rice and Southern Miss. Southern Miss, big.
The fighting Brett Favre's.
Big.
Yeah, that was tough. Real tough.
And, hey, here's one. Remember I told you?
You
BYU
did.
on the money line?
You
I
did.
said if you wanted a money line pick, BYU is my pick.
I did not know, and shame on me. It's not an excuse. I did not know going into that game that SMU had all those players that were out, including the quarterback. But that's why you have not too picky.
I wanted to sprinkle in a money line at some decent odds. They were plus 150. Hope everybody took it. Happy to help. But this one, none of us helped on. The last pick of the day, Boise State. They did win, but not by enough. They only won by 3. They didn't cover the 10.5.
Billy is asking me in the chat, how is it gifted, Tom? Those weren't 3 and outs. The defense made plays and got the ball. I am saying they made plays and got the ball. But the other team gave you the ball 4 times, including a fake punt, leading 17-3 in their own territory.
Any comment on the mean green?
Boise State. Those are L's across the board, right? They won, but they did not cover.
Straight across the board, baby.
Okay.
All right, here's the updated
All right,
record.
the updated list. Where are we? Oh, boy. Casey. Step back. Paul with a commanding week. What was that, about 8-4, 8-5? What was that, Paul?
8-5, yeah.
8-5. All right. Man, I had gotten a little closer. Closing in on Casey. You got to get to second before you can get to first. That was one of Harry Carey's great lines. You can't win 3 in a row until you win 2 in a row.
You know what? Actually, Tom, speaking of that, before we get to Brian Billick here, I have a surprise for both you and Casey, Tom.
Really?
I do. So, my dad is a loyal viewer.
Wait a minute. Boom Chakalaka just said we need to double-check that math again because we've seen that.
No,
botched.
it's right. We made sure it's right.
All
made sure it's right. Before we get into Brian Billick here, my dad is a loyal watcher, listener of the show.
He is.
He doesn't comment, but he does watch and listen. Okay. He and I both massive baseball fans, right? So he watched the other day, Yogi Berra. I went and saw him. Came home the other day, had this sitting on the table.
Look at that.
An entire book of Yogi Berra. The Yogi book. Just for you, Casey.
You mean Yogi
Education.
Berra.
Yogi Berra. Just for you, Casey. The Yogi book.
I like it.
By Yogi Berra. I really didn't say everything I said.
That's going like right here.
I came home the other day and sitting there right for me.
Yogi Berra, one of the all-time greats.
One of the all-time greats.
One of the all-time greats is correct. So should we take a break before Brian Billick? Is that what we should do here?
Casey and I can go through the stink list here. We won't go to commercial, but we can if you need to.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Run it, Casey.
It's that time of the show, the Ham and Eggers. These guys are great. Trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
All right, so we do have an updated stink list for you, all of you today, and I'm sure we'll get Tom's comment on it later, but we have a lot to get to the rest of the show. We have Brian Billick coming up. We have Dan Hoard coming up later in the show. If you're just watching, make sure you like the video, subscribe. I've seen our subscription numbers are already going up. The likes and everything else are just going up. But, Casey, you have an updated stink list for us, so throw it up there on the screen. And I know that the chat will be popping off at this. All right, hold on. Let me take the little thing off here so we can see everything. Casey, I want you to walk me through here how the Chiefs are not on your top tier.
Come on. Are you serious?
Yes.
They almost lost to the Texans. Literally the worst record team in the NFL, and they almost lost to them.
But, Casey, it's the NFL, Casey.
They gave the ball back to the Texans in overtime. They couldn't get it done the first drive in overtime. They gave it to the Texans, and Davis Mills, just trying to make a play, happens to get the ball stripped. Are you kidding me? They were gifted the game. They should have lost this game. Let's move on. They they're not title towns anymore. They're just slowly getting worse and worse.
You don't think
as
that the
time.
Kansas City Chiefs, who are competing for the #1 seed in the AFC, which is the best conference in the National Football League, should be on the top tier of title towns? You don't think that?
Nope. Not one bit.
I mean, I don't think that they will win the Super Bowl this year, but they will absolutely compete for the Super Bowl this year. All right.
I mean,
all right.
I know Patrick Mahomes didn't make any mistakes or anything like that.
All right.
But
No, that's fine. Okay.
you can't lose. You can't almost lose to this team.
Okay.
It's just simple as that.
All right. That's fine. The Colts. You're telling me that the Colts are better than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams?
Yes. I'm not going to overreact to the Vikings game. I still think the Vikings are frauds.
Casey, they came back from 33 down.
Yeah, they have a great offense, but have you seen how historically bad their defense is? It's miserable. Let's not overreact here, guys.
The real spirit cat says, thank God Chatterbox doesn't drug test. How in the world do you have Kansas City on that second line? I mean, they've lost the second fewest number of games in the NFL.
They almost lost to the Texans.
Are you kidding me?
They almost lost.
And you
to
have
the
Miami and Minnesota ahead of Dallas? Dallas beat Minnesota 40-3.
They just lost to the Jags.
I understand that.
But
they played Minnesota and beat them 40-3 in Minneapolis. Casey.
This is a week-to-week tier list of how stinky you are. And let me tell you, Dallas stunk. They let the Jags come back and beat them.
They did. I'm not a big Cowboys guy, but they are better than Minnesota.
And
they're better than Miami.
And you might be able to get out of me a borderline good for the Vikings, but I'm not going to overreact.
Dallas isn't borderline good?
No, there's only one borderline good team. You see the
Wait. You're putting the Vikings and the Cowboys on the same level. Where? Oh man, I don't think this is as bad as some of the lists you've done this year. But this one's tough. See, the problem here, Casey, the problem with this list is that you had been making so much progress. Tom and I were so proud of you. You had done so well in the last few weeks to build up your credibility on this list from 0 to at least a couple. And now, man, we got Kansas City being borderline good, and we have the Vikings coming back from 33 down, and the Cowboys not even being and the Dolphins going to Buffalo in the snow, none of them being even borderline good.
And another point that is made, Paul, you're spot on here. I mean, another point that is made is all Casey does is talk up the Lions, and the Lions are on a stink list.
They moved up quite a bit, actually.
You think they just beat the Jets, and you have them behind the Jets?
Well, the Jets probably should have won that game. Robert Saleh, he should have called that timeout.
Boy, oh boy, did he! I mean, good Lord, it's one of the few times I am not a fan in any form or fashion outside of Boomer Esiason, and I love James Brown as a human being, but I am not a fan in any form or fashion of that CBS pregame show and that studio show. But yesterday, they did an excellent job because, in fairness, they had time. A lot of time in the studio, you don't have time because you're getting to games, this game to that game, a game going into overtime, another game running over, another game getting started. But they actually very much broke down the time management or lack thereof of Robert Saleh. And we bring in Super Bowl winning head coach Brian Billick now to talk a little bit about this. Brian, I don't know how much you saw of that game, but I thought those guys, Bill Cowher, Sims, and Boomer Esiason, they all had slightly different spins on it, but the Jets had 3 timeouts. And Brian, they basically let, depending on which theory you'd have bought into about when to take the timeouts. Bill Cowher made the comment that, you wait until you get down right around a minute to start burning those timeouts. But if you go back to about 1:27 left in the game, they probably lost somewhere in the neighborhood of about 43 to 48 seconds of game clock by not taking timeouts. What's your theory on that?
Well, there are so many matrix. It's kind of like 2-point plays. There's a million charts out there that say, this is when you go for 2-point, here's when you don't. Time management, under 2 minutes, no timeouts, game's over, one timeout, you got to get it down to so many seconds, or you've got to get a first down. There's all sorts of charts. And that one, again, it's always in the eye, you're using the eye ball. If it didn't work, then you did it right. If it didn't, then you didn't. You can make a case. That is a standard that when you're in that situation, you're going to wait because you want to save those timeouts, notwithstanding how the play is going, until about a minute and 20 seconds. But you also have to judge, okay, how is the game been going? How is our defense holding? How are they?
Quick, apparently, Brian, let me interrupt you real quick. Apparently, we're having some kind of issue with your audio. Let me just step out for a second. We'll double-check this off the air and get right back to you. We're back in just a second.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, and if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Sweeney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Sweeney, the original used car superstore.
All right, back with Brian Billick. Coach, thanks for sticking with us here for a second. You were starting. You were going into about the eyes of the beholder there in the situation that happened. Please take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million charts out there. Whether it's 2-point, whether it's at the end of the game, how many timeouts you have to have inside or outside of 2 minutes to get the game, to control the ball. I agree with Bill. Typically, you're looking at a minute, but there's a lot of subjective questions when you get to that point. How's your defense playing? How are you running the ball? How's it gone back and forth? There's a lot of factors that go into it rather than a hard, cold, okay, I'm not going to start using these until 1 minute. And it's like anything. If it worked, then you did it right. And if you didn't, then you did it wrong. So, you can be critical of time management. It's always the thing that coaches get most criticized for. It obviously didn't work for them, so it's a fair assessment to say, they didn't handle it very well.
Want to stay with the Jets just for 1 second, Coach. Everyone out there is familiar with the whole Zach Wilson saga. He did not play well in the game against New England after the game, really didn't handle the press conference afterwards very well. Ultimately, it leads to him getting benched. Mike White gets a starter, gets killed against Buffalo 2 weeks ago, and a credit to him, keeps coming back. Rib injury keeps him out this past week. Wilson throws for over 300 yards, throws for a couple of touchdowns. They do lose a game. If you're Robert Saleh, what do you do at quarterback this coming week?
You know, the question is, how committed are you to still? I mean, Zach Wilson's their number one pick, okay? And so that's the way they want to go, okay? But they're going to play the best player available. They're going to give Zach Wilson, I think, every opportunity to kind of reclaim this, hold on to it. Like I said, he did play pretty well. So, you know that's what their inclination is. But at the same token, you know, because they're on the cusp of it now. And it also has to do with what does the locker room think? Does the locker room believe in Zach Wilson? Does the locker room believe in White? Not that, you know, is the final arbiter, because you can't let the, you know, inmates run in silence, so to speak. But it is going to be a factor. So, in-house, you got to know they'd love for Zach Wilson to continue to be the guy.
Issues we're having audio-wise are coming back. Brian, I'm going to let you go. I'm not sure what we got going on here, but we will get it straightened out for next week, my friend. And have a great day. And, my friend, have a very Merry Christmas to you and your bride, Kim, and your daughters and your grandkids, and everybody. Have a great and Merry Christmas. All right, so Brian Billick, kind enough to join us. We apologize for the technical issues we were having with his audio. Not sure what was going on there, but clearly they were there, and it's too bad. There were a number of things I wanted to ask him about in and around the National Football League from this past weekend, especially that play with the end of the game with the Patriots. So now you look ahead, and we've got Dan Hoard coming up here in about 15 minutes. Do we have access to the playoff picture thing?
We do.
All right, let's start here and take a look at the way things would play out right now. Okay, so the Bills, and then we'll start with the AFC side. The Bills right now are the number 1 seed. Tell you what, that number 2 seed, you better be careful what you wish for. I mean, you get in the playoffs, you're going to play a good team, obviously. But I know one thing. I'd rather play the Chargers if I'm the 3 seed than play Miami as a 2 seed. Even though Miami's lost 3 in a row, they gave Buffalo all they could handle and more in bad weather. And their offense is capable of putting up some major points. They got 29 against the Bills. So then the Bengals would host, all of a sudden the Chargers. The Chargers... You know, all the talk about Herbert, I mean, it's weird because their defense, I think I shared with you when they were on that Sunday night game or whatever it was a week ago, and the comment was made about when they go through the starting lineup, how 9 of the guys that were in the starting lineup last week were not starters when the season began because of injuries. And yet their defense played very, very well yesterday. They knocked Tannehill around a little bit. Tennessee is spiraling quickly. A 1-game lead over Jacksonville in the AFC South. Do they play again?
They do. Right at the end of the year.
Wow. How about that? What that can mean. So, you start there, and look, for the Bengals to get the number 1 seed, okay, Kansas City, let's start with a couple things. The first thing is Kansas City has to lose a game because the Bengals have lost 4. Kansas City and Buffalo have lost 3. Buffalo owns a tiebreak over Kansas City because the Bills beat the Chiefs. So, number 1, you have to hope Kansas City loses another game, and only one more. Number 2, you have to win out, you being the Bengals. That means New England this week. That means beating Buffalo, which would give the Bills a 4th loss. But, of course, the Bengals would hold the tiebreak if all had 4 losses over both Kansas City and Buffalo because you'd have wins over those 2 teams. So, that, in a nutshell, is how you get to the number 1 seed. There's no other path to get there unless Kansas City and Buffalo lose 2 or 3, and that ain't happening. Over on the other side is where it gets interesting. because you have Minnesota is still the 2. The 49ers, who have won like the Bengals 6 in a row, are at the 3. And then you have Tampa Bay and Dallas. That would be an interesting game. Dallas is a better team. Tampa Bay beat them the first game of the year when they knocked Dak Prescott out of the game. It's when Prescott broke his thumb. The Commanders are just barely hanging on at this point. You've got Washington a half game better because of the tie over both Seattle and the fighting Chris Spielmans. Now, you take a look, fellas. If you were a betting man, do you think the Commanders get that final spot? Yay or nay?
No.
No. I don't think so.
No?
No.
The Lions are going to get that last spot.
The way they're playing right now, you have to think that it'll probably be the Lions.
Well, let's check the schedules here, fellas, of those 3 teams. Okay? So we start with the Washington Football Wizards. Their schedule the rest of the year is as follows. Oh, boy. They're in big trouble.
Yeah, they're in big trouble.
They are
Live
in big
reaction,
trouble.
yeah.
They play the 49ers this week.
L.
They then play the Brownies at home and play the Dallas Cowboys at home. So it's not going to be the Washington Football Commanders.
No.
So we start there. Now we move on to the Seattle Seahawks, who have a tiebreak advantage, as we mentioned earlier, over the Detroit Lions because they beat them. They have left in the season at Kansas City this weekend. Bye-bye. That's one loss. They have the Jets, Jets at home. Jets will be playing for something there. It's a good game. And then you have the LA Rams at home. I am saying Seattle is not going to do it either.
I really don't think the Giants will either. Have you seen their
schedule? Well, they're now 8-5.
Yeah, but look at their schedule.
I know, but I mean, for them to get to 8 losses, I mean, we'll take a look. I mean, they got left on the schedule. They have the Vikings, the Colts, and the Eagles. They get 1 win out of those 3, they're in. They'll beat the Colts. They won't beat the Vikings or the Eagles. But they get to 9 wins. I think they're going to be in.
Yeah, if they get 1 more win out of the 3, I think they're
because they have a tie break. They had a tie and a win over the Commanders. So they would win a tie break there, right? We'll see. I mean, 2 more losses might be a big hit. You might be onto something there, especially with that tie. The best they could, I mean, that would mean, what, 8-7-1? Is that right? No, 9-7-1.
Now, if the Lions win out.
Yeah, if the Lions win out, they're in. Unless Seattle wins out, but that's not going to happen.
Have you seen their schedule?
Yep, I'm looking at it right now. They go to the Panthers this weekend. They have the Bears at home. And then they go to Lambeau Field for the last game of the year. All right, what about the AFC side, fellas?
I'm going to put up the graphic one more time.
All right, let's go to the AFC side of things here for a second. All of a sudden, Miami, they were 8-4 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Or 8-3, forgive me.
Yeah.
They've lost 3 in a row. But they have the final spot right now. The Chargers have a tiebreak over Miami because they beat them. Okay? So Miami left on the schedule. They're done with Buffalo now. They split with Buffalo. Their final 3 games are Packers at home, Patriots on the road, Jets at home.
Those are all winnable for them.
For sure. Not guaranteed, but looking good. For the Chargers, I hit the wrong team here. Bear with me a second.
The Browns are kind of hanging around, too.
Well, they're hanging around, but they need all kinds of help. Chargers left on their schedule. I mean, are you kidding?
Hit me with it.
They play the Colts. They play the Rams. And then they play at Denver.
Challenging schedule, Tom.
Tell you what, though, Denver is not a layup anymore. They are at least competing. I will give them that. They compete.
Their defense always competes.
Yep. I mean, they really do compete. They've had their issues, but they compete. All right. Tennessee is the 4 seed and the leader of the AFC South by 1 game. Left on their schedule, the Texans at home should be a win. Cowboys come into town, going to be tough. And then they end the year, as we mentioned, with Jacksonville. Okay?
Yep.
Jacksonville left on its schedule. Obviously, we talked about the season finale. That game will be at home against Tennessee. They play in New York against the Jets this weekend. That is a huge game with playoff implications.
Yep.
And then they play the Texans.
You know what's crazy is the Jags actually have control of their own destiny. If they win out, they're in.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? They're in that position?
The Jags.
The Jags.
Who would have thought that?
I never understood why the Eagles fired Peterson. The guy won a Super Bowl there.
With Nick Foles.
He's a heck of a coach, man. He's a heck of a coach. And he's got them at least down there. I mean, let's not get carried away now. I mean, at the end of the day, they're what, 6 and 8, right?
Yeah, they're 6 and 8.
I mean, so, let's don't get carried away. I mean, yesterday they win in overtime. They come back, give them all the credit in the world for that. It's the second time this year that they've won back-to-back games, something they obviously did not do last year. And so, they're much improved. And Tennessee is just the injuries are finally catching up. It's one guy after another, and especially the key guys. Tannehill was getting killed yesterday, kept coming back in. But, if you're a Bengals fan and you're sitting there thinking about, let's assume you don't get the number 1 seed and you don't get that bye. So put that playoff thing back up again. If you have to play in the opening round and you're going to be at home, which team would you least like to see of those that are hanging around the playoff picture in an opening round game? Now, we know they can beat anybody. That's a given. But saying which team would you least like to see? Would it be Miami? Would it be the Chargers? Would it be New England? Or would it be the Jets? Which of those 4 would you least like to see? I say, without a doubt, that would be Miami.
Yeah, it would either be Miami or the Chargers for me. That'd be a tough sell. I'd probably say Miami too. I'm not sure I'd want to see the Chargers either, but you gotta beat them to move on. So
that's right. Casey, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Miami and the Chargers are the 2 teams I don't want to see. I could deal with everyone else, even the Bills, honestly.
You'd rather play the Bills than the Chargers?
I would. I really would. I think the thing about Miami is when we played them, we were at full strength, and there's the incident with Tua getting hurt, the unknown of if he plays the full game. I still think we would have won the game, just to clarify. But if we're not healthy and we play Miami again, I'm not so sure that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle don't just pop off. And they did really well against us. Yeah. And then the Chargers, it's just Justin Herbert, man. I mean, we've already played him once. And in that game, it was close up until Mixon fumbled the ball. But there is just something to be said about the Chargers' weapons that make Justin just look so good. He throws it up in the perfect spot for them to get the ball. They win so many one-on-one battles. And that is something that our team really struggles with. We're really good. We can play tight, but when they're really good at playing tight, we seem to struggle in the secondary. So those are the two teams I don't want to see.
Well, the one thing that I think we have all agreed, the one area of the Bengals, for all the good, I think the one thing we all agree, where they're short. Now, does that have a chance to change? It does have a chance to change, and that's in their pass rush ability. Herbert has been sacked 33 times this year. He's thrown for over 4,000 yards. He hits on roughly 68% of his passes, 21 touchdowns, 9 picks. They don't run the ball well. Eckler is a decent player. He's not a great player, but he's a solid player, all-around player. But they only average for the season a little more than 3.5 yards per carry. But you're right when it comes to receiving weapons. I mean, they're like the Bengals in that regard. They're not as good as the Bengals, but they've got Palmer, Williams, Eckler, the tight end Everett, Keenan Allen, who's missed a lot of games. In only 7 games, he has almost 500 receiving yards. And then DeAndre Carter. They've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys with almost 500 receiving yards this year.
Did you include Eckler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's spreading it around a little bit. Create some problems for you.
Yeah, and speaking of problems, I was going to say this earlier. Tom Pelissero just tweeted about an hour ago. Sam Hubbard's out till the playoffs probably, so that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's tough. Oh, that just hit me hard. I mean, what do they do?
Damn, guys, I mean to bring the mood down here.
Well, the bottom line is, and look, I mean, you hear it all the time, that next man up. This is an opportunity for somebody. But who's it going to be? I mean, how long have we been saying, Osai? I mean, and finally he makes a couple of plays. Is he there yet? Nope. Carter? I don't even know if he plays anymore. Now, Hendrickson will be back. I think he's going to be back sooner than the playoffs. I would bet that Hendrickson plays the Buffalo game. They're going to have to cast him up and get him out there and play. But now Hubbard, who, look, he may not be the big sack guy and all that kind of thing, but he is simply an outstanding football player. He's smart. He's more times than not exactly where he needs to be or is supposed to be. He can play the run. He'll pick up a sack every now and again, apply pressure every now and again. But he is an excellent football player. He's been their third best lineman this entire year. And there are times he's been their best lineman this entire year when Reeder was out because Hubbard plays the run so well. Somebody has got to step in there.
Yeah, big time.
Because that pass rush was non-existent yesterday, by and large. Now, as the game went on, pockets started to collapse, forcing Brady to throw. He'd get hit every now and again, but they're going to need better because that Tampa Bay line it's not very good. And they're going to need somebody to play better. Who's that guy? Who is that guy? I mean, they've been finding guys to do it all year long. Did you know that Trey Flowers yesterday was the first interception by a Bengals cornerback this year?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
Well, that's why I was saying earlier, we don't create a bunch of turnovers. And yesterday was different. But that's obviously not going to be something that we can rely on moving forward. To answer your question, who's it going to be? You're looking at guys like Jeffrey Gunter.
Who?
Jeffrey Gunter. You're looking at guys like...
Who?
Cam Sample.
Who?
These guys are rotational pieces, and they're going to have to start taking on starting-type roles. And I don't know, man. It's going to be tough. It really is. It's going to be tough. But Lou Anarumo always seems to
dial it up, Lou.
Dial it
up, Lou.
He knows how to sprinkle the magic. So we'll see. We'll see what they can do.
Was it the defense yesterday, or the Bucs just give it away? Was it a combination?
It was a combination. I think they got some fire underneath of them, and what's helped spark it, that was Tampa. Tampa helped spark the comeback. But the Bengals cleaned up shop. They took them to the woodshed.
That's right, Casey. That's exactly right.
Joe Burrow, 4 more touchdown passes. Did he break some record for consecutive games with a touchdown pass with Jeff Blake or something like that yesterday? Did I hear that on the radio? I wasn't able to watch the whole game. I had some things I had to get done yesterday.
Christmas shopping?
I think somebody no, I just had other things I had to do.
Okay.
I mean, I love the Bengals, but, life does go on. Let's see. There was something in here. Somebody wrote about it because I did hear about it on the radio. Something with Jeff Blake.
Tied with Jeff Blake, 21 games.
Consecutively.
Yes.
With a touchdown.
Yep.
Yeah. How about that? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, hey, look, Emperor is saying breaking Jeff Blake record. Hey, Jeff Blake had some good moments with his franchise. They had some bad teams, but there was a spell there. He was a pretty exciting dude to watch. You guys aren't old enough to remember Jeff Blake, right?
Never got to watch him. But I knew he had a cannon.
He gave
of an
this
arm.
town a lot of excitement for a while, man. I mean, he was the big arm, throwing 40 and 50-yard touchdown passes. He was fun to watch. But, boy, did he play on some bad teams. Holy Moses. Shakin' Blake, they called him. You guys would have liked him. Casey, you'd have told me how many Super Bowls he was going to win during the dark ages of Bengals football.
The dark ages.
The dark ages. How much did you stay with the Bengals, Casey, through the dark ages?
I watched every game. Literally every game. But it was miserable because I was still expecting them to win, regardless of how they were doing. By the end, I was kind of on the tank for Tua. I forget, bungle for Burrow.
Bungle for Burrow.
We have Shay, who I'm assuming, I don't know. Shay says, I'm done listening to this gray-haired guy. That would be me. He's doubting what our team has been able to accomplish all year long. He's a sports commentator for the Bengals. And he didn't watch a whole game. Well, Shay, let's break that down just for a second. A, I am not the sports commentator for the Bengals. This is Chatterbox Sports here. Number 2, I only had to run out for a minute or two, but I had to run out. I didn't miss a play. On the radio, I was still listening. And number 3, I'm not doubting the Bengals. I'm asking who, as in, who are these guys? And I said it's an opportunity for somebody to step up. Turn it off. It's the beauty of this whole thing. You don't like it? Turn it off.
That was a clapback, Tom.
Don says, Tom, you don't have to explain to anybody why you missed some of the game. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good Lord.
Tom.
God almighty. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. All right.
All right, we got Dan's not in yet, but we do have Dan Hoard coming up here in just a minute.
Okay.
Casey, go ahead.
So let's talk about this day in history.
We have a very quick this day in history.
Ooh, I like these.
But a memorable one.
All right, what is it?
Quick but memorable.
So we got a sports one, and we have an actual historical
one to
talk about.
Let's hear it.
So this day in sports history, something called the Manhattan Miracle happened. I'm sure you remember this one,
I
Tom.
do.
And this is just something to live for the ages.
Fire it up, Casey.
He's not returned one for a touchdown this year. Waits. And it's a line drive kick. Jackson bobbles it and now has to try and recover. Deshaun Jackson gets a block. Are you kidding? Deshaun Jackson still not in, and now in for the touchdown. No flags. Unbelievable. No time left. Eagles win. Jackson bobbled it and then let blocks get set up.
Deshaun Jackson.
What a cat.
That dude, I tell you what right now, and he's had a great career. He's a borderline Hall of Fame guy when you start adding up all the receiving yards and the punt returns and the kick returns. I think he could have been one of the 10 greatest receivers in the history of football. I think there was a while there his concentration wasn't there all the time because he is an unbelievably gifted player and has had a great career. All right, what's next?
We have one other thing before we get to Dan Hoard, who is in the waiting room, but this is a piece of American history here. Throw it up there, Casey.
There it is, General George Washington.
And, Tom, you know what General George Washington is.
Leader of men. There's no question about that.
1777, General Washington leads the Continental Army into Valley Forge. They come out the other side, a changed nation.
And my understanding is I've never been to Valley Forge, but I had a buddy of mine who was there not too long ago. I hear it is well worth the trip.
You got to go, Tom.
Yep. I hear it's fantastic.
I love American history.
That is indeed a leader of men, General George Washington. First president of these great United States of America. And a man who sees a lot of it is our main man, Dan Hoard. He has gone from Cincinnati to Boston to Tampa and back to Cincinnati within roughly 72 hours. Dan, welcome home, young man.
Thank you, sir. And I can confirm that Valley Forge is well worth the trip. My dad took me and my two older sisters to Valley Forge when I was young, probably 7 or 8 years old. And even at that young age, Dan Hoard, with hair, found it very cool. So you should check it out.
I am definitely going to check it out. I'll be an empty nester this time next year. And so start getting out and doing some of that stuff. Let's start with UC. Look, some guys declared early. Coaching staff, part of it leaves with Luke Fickell. God bless Kerry Combs. He came in there trying to hold it all together. Was there anything to get excited about or get discouraged about, or you just sort of shove it off into its own little category of the game on Saturday?
I would say there's one thing to be excited about, and that is the fact that Louisville's defense is coming to Cincinnati, at least in terms of how it's coached and the strategy. Louisville was second in the nation in sacks this year. Obviously, the Bearcats couldn't block them on Saturday at Fenway. They sacked Evan Prater 7 times, 6 times in the first half. So if that's the style of defense and the type of players that Scott Satterfield and his defensive staff are going to be bringing to Cincinnati going forward, I think that is something to be excited about. It wasn't very exciting for Bearcat fans to watch on Saturday, but it could be going forward.
You know, Dan, I was just kind of curious. It's one thing to put a lot of faith into a young man who's making only a second start in a row since Ben Bryant got hurt, referring to Evan Prater. But what happened? Was Louisville's defense just that good, as you just pointed out? Or because, the UC has a very good offensive line and an experienced offensive line.
Kind of a perfect storm situation, Tom. So Louisville, like I said, number 2 in the country in sacks. How do they get them? They blitz the heck out of you. So in a lot of instances, they're bringing more guys than you can block, and you've got to get rid of the ball quickly, and you've got to have it schemed up to deal with that kind of thing. So now you're in a bowl game where your top 5 receiving targets aren't there. The guys that ideally you would throw a short pass to that would turn it into a 70-yard touchdown like Trey Tucker or Tyler Scott. Those guys are gone. Much of your offensive coaching staff is gone, so it's difficult to make adjustments in a game like that where the defense is doing things you don't see a lot. So I really think it was a perfect storm type of situation. I don't put it all on Evan Prater. It would have helped, I think, to have a more experienced quarterback to make the adjustments and deal with stuff like that. But that wasn't the case in that game, and obviously it was a difficult matchup for Cincinnati.
Okay, where is the program, Dan, in terms of recruiting? Whenever you have a coaching change, you're going to have guys that either leave and go with Luke Fickell, in this case up to Wisconsin. Guys will decommit, reopen the recruiting process. Where do you think UC is at this point in time?
Well, that's all Scott Satterfield and the coaches that he has brought with him to Cincinnati have been doing since he got the job. It's been recruiting nonstop. I think they've done a reasonably good job of holding on to some of the good players that Luke Fickell had committed to Cincinnati, including the quarterback that was part of this class. He's Mr. Football in Michigan, so great to get him to stay on board. I think they have 7 guys, if I'm not mistaken, that have announced plans to stay. There are a couple of guys that are still kind of considering their choices. And then several guys have either gone to Wisconsin or decided to go elsewhere. So that's what's going to happen in this situation. A couple of the recruits that Scott Satterfield had committed at Louisville have announced plans to come to Cincinnati. And then there's still plenty of openings for high school players and for transfers. So that's what they're working on. That's all they're working on. And I think so far it's gone about as well as you could hope, quite honestly.
All right, let's talk about the Bengals yesterday. The first half, you watched it. You're sitting there at halftime with your buddy Dave Lapham and your crew, and you're thinking what at halftime?
Well, you're thinking because of that field goal at the end of the half, at least they have some momentum. And we know that this is a team that isn't fazed when they get behind in the first half, going back to last year and the playoff wins that they had and the regular season win over Kansas City as well. So that gave you some hope. I can't honestly say I felt good about it because until the final drive of the first half, I think the total yards were like 260 to 30. They were playing poorly. It looked like their injuries in the secondary were going to be a major problem, but credit Lou Anarumo and the defense. They adjusted. They started putting more pressure on Brady. How about 4 takeaways and 11 snaps in the third quarter against that guy? It was simply unbelievable. And although it wasn't a great day for the Bengals offense, starting with the field position they had in the second half, they were able to move it enough to punch it in 4 times and win the game.
You know, Dan, we were talking right before you came on. The tweet came out from down at Paycor that it looks like Sam Hubbard now with the calf injury left early in the game yesterday, did not return, that he is going to be out until the playoffs. And, of course, the Bengals are fighting for a divisional championship. Heck, they're fighting for a number 1 seed. How do you continue to explain this depth of this franchise? I mean, all the way from offense, defense, to the long snapper, to the punter, who's the same guy who's the holder. I mean, it seems like it never ends. Do you think there's still some guys all of a sudden we haven't talked about that we might be talking about?
Yeah, you might have to. I mean, Jeffrey Gunter now is probably going to step up and get more snaps if Sam Hubbard is out for the rest of the regular season. I think Trey Hendrickson is going to be back, probably not this week, maybe next week in the Monday night game against Buffalo, especially if he's, able to play with some sort of club on his hand that has the broken wrist. So you lose Sam, you might get Trey back, but yeah, more guys are going to have to take advantage of their opportunities. And I guess Jeffrey Gunter was a 7th-round draft pick this year, is probably next in line to at least be in the rotation. He's certainly not going to be at the top of the totem pole, but he probably starts getting some snaps.
Did you feel yesterday, Dan, and you mentioned, and we've talked about it a long time already today, the 4 takeaways, the turnovers. I just felt like, and for the life of me, I mean, I see it every single week in the NFL. And look, I mean, I've never been a coach, never will be a coach, not smart enough to be a coach, football coach. But, whether it's the New England game and the last play of that game, which I still cannot believe happened. I'm not sure anybody can believe it happened. But even the fake punt yesterday. Now, look, Todd Bowles can say it should have been a 4 or 5 yard run. They're ahead 17-3. They're punting. They haven't started this litany of turnovers yet. And instead of just snapping the ball to the punter, they're going to try something cute in their own territory. I just felt like you gave the Bengals a reason to get excited. I mean, the only thing, as you just pointed, they had to be excited about the whole game to that point, was the field goal before halftime.
Right. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what went wrong there. clearly Giovanni Bernard was not expecting the ball to be snapped to him. So in those fake punt situations, the personal protector, Giovanni Bernard in this case, has the freedom to call it off, or in some cases has the freedom to green light it. Gio took all of the responsibility when he was asked about it after the game, but that's probably him just covering for others. So for whatever reason that it was botched, that's one thing, but it should have never been called. You're that deep in your own territory. Like you said, punt it, play defense. The Bengals to that point had one okay drive in the 2-minute drill out of 5 possessions in the first half. So too risky, didn't need to do it. You seem to have the game in pretty good control, and that definitely breathed life into the Bengals sideline. Even though they didn't score a touchdown after recovering that, it kept the momentum going in their direction, and from there on in, they dominated.
You know, Dan, I'm kind of curious, and I'm not asking you to sit here and spill secrets in any way, shape, or form because, you know, you get a chance to ride on the Bengals team charter just like I did with the Reds, you know, all those years, or other baseball teams, what have you. But I'm just kind of curious as an overall mood. You win the game, clearly taking advantage of the other team's mistakes. You also know that the injuries continue to pile up. You know what's coming. How would you describe the overall mood of the team at this? I mean, you've won 6 in a row, so how bad can it be? But right. You know what I'm getting at here. The Bengals are better than they were last year. I don't think there's any debate about that. Maybe you would disagree with me. I'd be curious maybe if you do. But I think they're better than they were a year ago. Does that mean they get to the Super Bowl? No, it doesn't. But I like their chances at this point in time this year better than last year. But what's the mood of the team right now, if there is such a thing?
Well, let me speak specifically to the mood yesterday, excuse me, because when I went down from the press box to the locker room to do post-game interviews, I was expecting it to be giddy. I was giddy. Lapp was giddy. It was a great comeback. You beat Tom Brady when you're down 17-zip. That had never happened to him at home in his NFL career, spanning 23 years. So I walked in that locker room really expecting, like I said, a giddy mood, and that's not what I found. Sure, they were happy, but it was kind of businesslike, which surprised me. There was, some frivolity on the flight back to Cincinnati. Guys were happy, playing cards, stuff like that. But it was less over-the-top excited than you might expect, considering what they had done. And I think that speaks well for the team in general. You know, Zach Taylor in the post-game celebration made the speech. We're not giving out T-shirts and hats. We didn't clinch anything with this win. We're moving in the direction that we want to go. But I think the team has kind of picked up on that, and that's how I would describe the move. It's still unfinished business, even though they have climbed into first place in the division.
All right, Danny. Well, I want to thank you, as always, for your time. A very Merry Christmas to you and your family. I'm hoping you get back at a decent time from Foxborough after the game on Saturday to enjoy Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with your family. Merry Christmas to you, Danny. Thanks, as always, for everything.
Merry Christmas to you as well, Tom, and everybody there. And it's time to get my Christmas shopping started.
Yeah, well, that might help. That might be a good thing. That might be considering you got to leave Friday. You might want to get going.
One day.
Well, I don't want to hold you up. Get out the door and get rolling. Get going.
There we go.
Click away like most people do now, right? Just click away. Click away. Dan Hoard, always so gracious, and we're so grateful for his time. Now there's a guy, and I talked about him not getting the Reds job, right? When I got run. The St. Louis Cardinals job is open. Baseball broadcasting job is open, sadly. My old friend Dan McLaughlin lost his job. It's been in the papers and all that kind of thing here recently. I don't know if Dan's even applying for that Cardinal job, but if you're out there with the Cardinals, there's a guy you ought to consider. What about Paul? Are you applying for that job?
The Cardinals job?
Yeah.
I'll throw my name in the hat.
Well, have you thrown it in the hat? Have you done anything about it? What the hell are you waiting on?
Needs some recommendations. Need a letter of recommendation. Put a tape together. I'll get in there.
Well, I mean, my letter of recommendation may not be what it once was. I mean, since I'm an ex-professional, according to the guy sitting to your left. But I would be happy to recommend you for that job.
I would say, Tom,
that's a big job.
Major League Baseball is a little I would say that's a few steps past where I
See, this is where I have a problem with your generation. Okay? This is where I have a problem. Because you guys, you don't think big. You don't think big. In the winter of 1989, I was a weekend sports anchor at Channel 5. And I was doing about 40 Reds games on television. The Chicago Cubs job opens up. I'm in California, and I read about it in the Sporting News. Right? I called my old buddy Bill Hemmer, who's back in Cincinnati, and I said, dude, do me a favor. Rip off about 5 minutes worth of a tape. Here's the address. Send that baby off to Chicago. Cubs job just opened. Right? I don't tell my dad, don't tell my mom, don't tell anybody. But you know what? You never know until you try. They had hundreds of people apply for that job. Probably 90% of them were more experienced and a better announcer than me. You just never know. You never know. You've got to think and dream big. I don't want to hear in the studio ever again that it's too much of a long shot. Put the damn tape together, all right?
Okay.
And let's see what happens.
All right. All right.
Is that all right?
All right. I can do that.
Is that fair advice?
That's fair advice.
All right. Do we have a cherry on top?
We do.
Before we get to Trace's tired shirt and box lunch coming up. All right, here we go.
All right, here's
the UDF cherry on top. It's definitely not this computer because my son's computer, it's about 1,000 years old and the power's up.
So this cherry on top today comes courtesy of the World Cup yesterday, and it is an awesome drone video of Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina.
Oh, let's see that.
Look at this and the scene after they won the World Cup.
See, now they talk about World Series parades and Super Bowl parades and all this other kind of thing here in the United States. None of them look anything like this.
I mean, you just think about it, Tom. Back in 2018, 1.12 billion people watched the World Cup final, and 3.2 billion at least turned it on at some point in the match. That was 4 years ago. Think about this with Messi in his last World Cup final, what these numbers are going to look like.
Oh, they'll be insane.
It'll be incredible.
Insane.
Billion. I mean, we're talking 3.2 billion. That's almost half the world.
Yeah. You're right. I don't know what it says about the world. It's just soccer.
What about Fox Sports?
Not football.
What about Fox Sports going from the greatest soccer game of all time to Andy Dalton and Desmond Ritter in a matter of 2 minutes?
Cut it off very quickly.
I think that Fox was hoping in their international feed, I think they were hoping that there would be knowing that was the backup plan, that they were hoping for 9 rounds of penalty kicks.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that drop-off? I mean, that might be the greatest drop-off in the history from one television show to another television show of all time. And the NFL does draw pretty well. But from the viewership of that World Cup final to the Falcons v. Saints.
It's like going from off the bench to box lunch.
You said it, not me. Reed, you said it, not me. How we doing, man? Good weekend?
Good. Tom, I was gonna say, Shay got on you a little bit, and I think I agree. I think as a Bengals broadcaster that you are, you've got to be a little more upbeat.
I am very upbeat. But look, somebody in the room has to ask some of the questions that no one wants to ask.
Casey ain't gonna ask.
If they play, no, Casey, no, forget it. He's right there with Shay.
What?
Well, we love Casey. He's right. That's why we love all the hardcore fans. That's what you're supposed to be. I'm a fan.
It's a fanatic.
But would you want to be behind Buffalo 17-3?
No.
Okay. These guys are okay with it.
I'm all up for the challenge.
If we're playing Patrick Mahomes, I don't think 17-3 is enough. We got to be down 21-3.
Yeah. Again, we're getting back to those two famous words.
What's that?
What are they, Casey?
Last year.
That's right.
There it is.
I think that there's something to that, though. Here's the thing about the Bengal fandom that's difficult to get over the hump. Some do it just because they're fans and they
and God bless them.
Some, like yourself, though, I would argue to try to get you over this hump, Tom. And I'm not saying you're there yet, but you could say the Patriots had that swagger, that mojo. You just felt like they were going to find a way to win, no matter the situation.
You mean in the heyday?
What?
In the heyday?
Well, yeah, when Tom Brady was
okay.
was
I
in
just want
his
to make sure I
heyday.
understood what you were talking about.
So yeah, so I'm saying I'm not saying the Bengals are there yet, but I think that there's this weird fandom and this thought process with the Bengals with inside their locker room, and certainly some fans, but even inside the locker room, that they do think that they're going to come back and win every game. Now, I don't think that that's the way that they obviously go about it. They're not like, hey, let's go down 17-3 at half, and then we'll just assume that that the Bucs are just going to hand us the game, which is kind of what happened. And I didn't want to come in here and be this negative Nancy kind of guy.
Oh boy.
But, and I know that's what everyone in the office thinks. Oh, Trace's going to come in here and just make fun of
your favorite thing?
It's not my favorite thing. I just think that I will give the Bengals credit, and they capitalize on the opportunities, though. Like, they scored touchdowns.
I agree.
They could have kicked field goals.
I agree.
They could have allowed the Bucs to hang around, and they did what finally needed to happen with Tom Brady. Tom Brady, for the first time in his career, in my opinion, sat on that sideline, and he thought to himself that I'm the reason we are losing this football game. I genuinely think that, because what else was he looking at that iPad for so long for? It almost looked like he was like the guy that didn't want to interact with the person that he knows across the cafe. And he's just like, I got to stick something in my face. I got to take a fake phone call. Honestly, I felt bad for Tom, maybe for the first time. I know Bengals fans did it, but in the moment, I was just like, that's the end of it. I genuinely think that, you can say Burrow's the guy that broke Brady or whatever it may be, and I'm sure that'll be the narrative, but I genuinely think, and I say all this, and they'll probably get in at 6-10. They'll get in the playoffs somehow, or whatever the record would be.
Get to the championship.
And then they'll go on the Super Bowl,
and
whatever.
Right.
But I just think that it's time. It really is time for Tom to go.
Well, there's two parts of that, and I'm with you 1,000%. And I mean, it's a phenomenal feeling to have in a locker room, in any sport, where you really believe that no matter what, you're going to find a way to win the game. And I very much think the Bengals have that mindset. I think that if they fall behind, they don't want to be behind, like you pointed out. They prefer to be playing ahead from the first 5 minutes of the game through the rest of the game. Everybody would. But they very much do believe that they can beat anybody, no matter what the score is. And there's a lot to be said for that mindset. And I give Zach Taylor and Anarumo and the players, staff, all the credit in the world for it. As for Brady, I just don't understand, and I've never understood this. I mean, it's like that Indianapolis-Minnesota game. I don't understand how a team can look so good. And let's be honest about it. I mean, in that first half, Tampa Bay looked really good. They looked like a playoff, bona fide, contending team.
Yeah.
260 yards of offense. They don't turn it over. They score 17 points. Their defense gives up nothing till the last second of the first half. They force the Bengals on 3 and out. They get a takeaway. They look like a good, solid playoff team. And then in the span of 17 minutes of game clock, they look like the worst team in the NFL. How does that happen? Seriously, how does that happen?
Momentum's a real thing.
No doubt.
And I don't know when coaches will come to the realization that if things are going relatively well, you don't poke the bear, as they say. I mean, you guys were in here questioning whether or not, I think rightfully so, Paul brought up the fact that if you're going to go for it, just go for it. How about you just punt the ball?
No doubt.
Your defense has been playing incredibly well, and you just decide that you're going to go out on a whim and go for a fake punt and give all the momentum in the world back to the Bengals. That makes zero sense to me. And then the other thing that doesn't make sense to me too is like I heard Billick before he started having the static situation going on, is like he was talking about how these coaches have charts and all of this stuff for like at what point, Tom, do we, I don't want to say as a society, that's probably too big of a term, but we as fans just be like, can't coaches just use their brain? Just be like, okay, we got a minute left in the game. I got 3 timeouts. I just got a 40-yard gainer. It's going to take my team, 25 seconds to get to the ball.
Yep.
Maybe I just call a timeout. Like, why does everything got to be so chart-oriented?
CBS did such an excellent job, and you had differences of opinion. I don't know if you saw the segment. You've got Phil Simms in there who's going back to maybe 4 or 5 plays before the big, long gain, right? Then you get Boomer Esiason in there who's saying, oh, wait a minute now, I'm looking more at the long play like you're talking about. And then Cowher, they all sort of defer to Cowher because he's a Super Bowl winning coach, and that's fine. You should. I mean, he's been there 1,000 times, and he talks about how he feels like you wait till you get to a minute. But there's always gray area in there. And like you said, the big long pass play, that was to Wilson, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you're waiting for your offensive lineman to jog 45 or 50 yards down the field, and you don't spend a timeout. It forces you to kick. What was that, about a 50-yard, 45-yard field goal Zerline had, longer than that?
I think it was 51.
Okay, yeah, it was a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have killed for that to be 38, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy
that's the
field
difference.
goal.
You play the whole game. You compete your tail off. You play against a team that's playing well right now. You go with a quarterback who everybody's south on. He plays pretty good. And then all of a sudden, he's getting you down the field, at least for a chance to tie the thing up. And then you don't know what happens. And you got a coach over there standing, looking around, and you're like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
There's two things that are inexcusable in this league. And I don't want to keep the other thing the Bengals need to figure out is their challenging situation as well. This is from an outsider's perspective.
Bad.
You can see I'm a Packers fan. But when I watch Bengals games, these guys challenge plays, and you're like, what's the win? I mean, is there that big of a win here to possibly lose a timeout and lose the opportunity of challenging a play later in the game when it's a little more meaningful? And then they don't challenge plays where it's like, okay, Jamar Chase has 2 feet in bounds and the ball's over the goal line, but let's rush to the line and snap the ball as fast as we can.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be negative
out of
here.
timeout with 14 minutes left in the half and the quarter every game.
Like how are these guys? And again, I don't know if coaches. I know in college they're making millions of dollars. I don't know what the salaries are in the NFL, but like you spend too much time in the office. I mean, these guys put 100-hour work weeks in
easily.
And it's like we don't just know the basics or the fundamentals of a clock at the end of the game, and then we challenge just random stuff that just doesn't seem like it's worth it.
Well, I think, and again, this is just from talking to people through the years. What's happened is that you've got these coaches with the headsets on, right? And it's a lot like when you're broadcasting. So a lot of time you got these headsets on, and you can't see the forest for the trees. There's something right there in front of you, and you're not seeing it because you got 9 voices in your head. You got to go to this, you got to go to that. You got a guy sitting next to you talking. You got a producer in your ear talking, and before you know it, you just missed a streaker running down the middle of the field, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, I think, to some of these coaches. They're standing there. They got 4 or 5 voices that are on them there. You're getting near to the end of the game. Are we going to call 2 plays? Does Saleh like? He doesn't call the plays on offense, but does he like what he's hearing about the plays they're going to call? He's got to make sure the quarterback, and he's responding, understands what's going on. And then the next thing you look up, and you don't even know that 20 seconds have just gone by. It's not an excuse, but I think that's what's happening with some of these guys.
Do you think they'll ever get to a point in the NFL where they assign roles and responsibilities? Like, I know I've said this before, but
one
guy's job is literally a clock manager, and he has everything, I don't want to say figured out, but it's his job to call a timeout. Like, if they want a timeout, not the head coach's responsibility, and you just give them trust. If the head coach doesn't call every single defensive play and doesn't call every single offensive play, then I think that you can say there's delegation going on.
Problem is,
so
I'm sure those guys exist. I have no doubt they exist for every team in football. I'm sure they have that guy. Now, whether he's down on the sideline or he's up top, I have no idea. But there's no way they're ever going to get to a point where, can you imagine? Pick any head coach in the league. You're going to let some dude standing next to you all of a sudden just start saying, hey, coach, call timeout.
Well, they ought to think about it because Zach Taylor's out here calling.
You know how I know, but you know as well as I do.
I understand what you're saying, but Zach Taylor's out here calling timeouts to save 5 yards or whatever it is on a point after attempt. and they run the point after attempt, and it's like a 15-yard pass.
Well, I mean, how in the world you have to spend a timeout on a 2-point conversion play?
Yeah.
Or, sometimes you'll see some teams, I don't think it's happened to the Bengals this year, did last year, where you come out of a timeout and you have a delay a game.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted, to be fair to Taylor, he wanted them to reset the play clock, which they do a lot of the times on those situations. And he didn't get what he wanted, and obviously he was very upset about it. So I won't crush Zach about that, but I just think sometimes – again, I know things are moving fast, and as you said, there's a million people talking in your ears about things, but I don't know, man. It's just frustrating when I watch the NFL, and it's like they put so much time, effort. They're really knowledgeable people, and then they just can't figure out the basics.
Well, dude, I mean, the story came out over the weekend. I can't remember what the number was, but just when you think the NFL guys are the smartest guys in the room, they came out at the owners' meetings and a memo out to everybody, and they put it on some PowerPoint presentation about all the hundreds of millions, 800 million?
800 million.
800 million
not
of guys that aren't even working.
Million.
Guys that aren't even working.
On getting rid of contracts, right?
Between head coaches and the one they pointed out, the big one was the guy in Carolina who's now going to Nebraska, Matt, what am I drawing?
Rule. Matt Rule.
Yeah, I mean, and then other executives and all the money the NFL is spending on guys that aren't even around anymore. All right.
Fair enough.
It's time for box lunch, fellas.
We're talking about the Hoods a lot.
Yeah, we're talking about the fighting Hoods. The Bengals is Tom.
Bengals. Roll it. Six straight.
6 straight.
Super Bowl.
Love it, Tom.
Fair enough.
Love it, Tom.
See you guys.
See you, Tom. So we just wanted to go over, I mean, it's obviously a big win like yesterday. We just wanted to go over some positives and some negatives. And we've got the Packer homer over here wearing his Packer green.
The
big
Packers
game. It's
playoffs.
It's a big game.
The run starts tonight.
I put in the last show that they're playoff bound. But, you want to have a level head when you watch the Bengals like you do. You don't want to just get swept up in the 17-0 comeback. And I don't want to overly put on the positives because that's what everyone talks about. You want to talk about some of the negatives. Can we talk about how Jamar Chase was getting bullied, pushed around in that first half? Did anyone else notice that?
I didn't really see that. I mean, listen, here's the thing. You got to understand, as a Bengals fan, Tampa Bay has a playoff-worthy defense. In fact, they're good. Tampa Bay, if you gave them a quarterback that was worth his weight, they would be – I'm being serious. They would be a legitimate playoff contender.
Their line is bad, but you're right.
I'm just telling you. I think that their defense is good, and oftentimes at least from a Bengals perspective, you're probably wondering, like, what's going on? Our offense isn't clicking, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes the other team's just as good. This is the NFL. It's hard to win in this league. And to the Bengals' credit, though, as they've done time and time again, they found a way to win when things weren't going well.
That is one overwhelming positive about this Bengals team is, and I think the world of Marvin Lewis. I thought he was a great coach. I thought he changed the complexion of this franchise. But if a Marvin Lewis-led team went down 17-0, 17-3 against Tom Brady, that game, there's no doubt in my mind that game ends up being 30-10. 30-10. The just mentality of the Bengals since last season has been far and away better than anything I've seen from the Bengals my entire lifetime.
The one thing you can take away with the Bengals that I think that you need to be, as a fan, you need to be like very thankful for is that they found themselves in positions last year, and I'll use the term last year because I'm one to believe I think that things can transfer or translate year after year. It's been proven in this league, right? Like the Steelers were good for a long time with Roethlisberger,
right?
In the Brady's, like the same thing can be said about Burrow. Like things that happened last year can be leaned upon this year, and they already have been. So, like, I think one thing to be thankful for is that they've been in this spot before where they've been down, and they've found ways to win. To whereas if they are down, there's not slumping heads. There's no one feeling sorry for themselves. They genuinely think that something's going to happen. They're not going to be able to tell you exactly, but they're going to say something's going to happen in this game, and we're going to find a way to win. And so, case in point, I think that Casey brought this up maybe like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. When they played the Chiefs, there's like sideline audio. I think it was Pratt. Was it Pratt, the linebacker on the sideline? And he's like,
at a wedding.
He said something along the lines on the sideline. He said, we're just going to get a turnover right here, and we're going to find a way to win this game. Yeah, and that was the thought. Like, obviously on the sideline, that was the talk. Bad teams or teams that don't have success, they don't talk like that. Like, they're waiting for something bad to happen. And I think the Bengals are in a position, finally, to where they're not the old Bengals. They look forward to winning. They believe they're going to win. Now, I think there's a lot of things that this team lacks that might show up in the postseason, but they might not. And I just think, like, from Tom's perspective, obviously we could try to cheer Tom up, but it's like, enjoy it. You know, like, that's the one thing I would say. Like, enjoy it. Embrace the fact that your team expects to win.
Never take it for granted. Never take this run, this team, JB9. Don't take any of it for granted. Don't think that what we're doing is just the norm, which that's how you want it to be, but don't ever take it for granted. And, you know, I looked up since last year, and I know that's what Tom doesn't want to say, and you brought it up, but since last year, the Bengals have been playing late in the fourth quarter or outright winning in every game but 3. There was only 3 games that they were out of it. Twice against the Browns and then the Chargers last December when that really weird game. Every other game, the Bengals have been fighting in the fourth quarter, which is all you want as a fan, is to watch your team compete and have a chance to win late.
There's a chance. There's always a chance for the Bengals to find a way to win. It feels like when Joe Burrow's back there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do think that there are things that this team, as we say, if you want to point out a few of the negatives, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the injury bug. There's obviously some health concerns at this point with the Bengals. You got to figure out whether or not they're going to be limping into the postseason or if they're going to be a team that kind of gets hot late. They've been hot. And I don't. Maybe the chat thinks I'm stupid for saying this, and maybe you guys, I'd be curious from the Bengals fandom. Do you want them? I know you don't want them to lose a game, but in all honesty, the chances of them getting a 1-seed are like slim to none, right?
They've got to win out. If the Chiefs lose one game and the Bengals win out, they're the 1-seed.
Yeah, I just say this about the Bengals: if you're not going to get the 1-seed, which is the only team that gets a bye, then at that point, I'd rather just rest my guys and live with just going to the postseason as healthy as you possibly can. Because I don't know if there's that big of an advantage, and I know people are going to kill me when I say this. I don't know if there's that. Would you rather? Here we go. You want to play this game, Bengal fans? Would you rather limp into the postseason, kind of how it feels right now from a health perspective, or go on the road and play a home game? Or go on the road and play the Jaguars or the Titans? I'd rather, like, I'm not saying lose the division on purpose, but like if you went into the last week of the season, would you rather rest some of your guys if you know you're automatically in? Or I guess I know the answer. There's no way you're not going to play to win the division, but I genuinely would consider, I would rather go on the road, play the Jags or the Titans on the road than to play the Chargers or the Dolphins at home if you win the division.
Well, there's going to be weird situations going into that Week 18 game against the Ravens where the possible outcomes are, if we win, we can be the number 1 seed because the Chiefs have lost. If we win, we win the division outright. If we lose, we play the Ravens again in Baltimore this time. If we lose, we could go to Tennessee. So there's going to be so many swirling possibilities that it's impossible to look at the crystal ball and say we got to win outright. But if you're asking me, if you'd rather host the Chargers or go to Tennessee or go to Jacksonville, the question's pretty simple. You go to Jacksonville or Tennessee.
Right.
But there's no way to understand what that shakes out to look like until you get there. The one thing you don't want to do, the worst possible scenario is going into Week 18, playing the Ravens, knowing that if you lose, you go back to Baltimore the next week and play the Ravens. I don't want to play the Ravens 2 times in a row. I don't want that at all.
You don't want to play. Here's one thing that you definitely don't want in the NFL. You don't want to, and this sounds really dumb, but it's true. You don't want to have to beat a team 3 times in a row either. Like, if I was the Ravens, I'm just saying, if I was the Ravens and I somehow won the last week of the season, I don't want to have to play the Bengals again.
Well, if you remember 12 years ago, the Bengals already clinched the postseason. They're playing the Jets the final week of the year, and they rest a bunch of players against the Jets. The Jets need a win to get into postseason. They rest a bunch of players. The Jets win. We then host the Jets the next week in the postseason, and the Jets blitzed us.
There's 2 kids getting picked last at recess class right now in the AFC, in my opinion.
The South.
It's either whoever wins the South and the Ravens.
Yeah,
those are the teams. Outside of that, I don't really know if there's a pushover game in the AFC, and that's the difficult part with the Bengals. That if they win the division, and I'm not trying to like spin a negative or a positive into a negative, but if they were to win the division, and if you had to go through the Chargers / Miami, through the Bills, and then you got the Chiefs waiting on you, if you get to the Super Bowl, that is honestly, I haven't looked at the history of the league, but that's one of probably the most difficult roads to a Super Bowl that I've probably ever seen.
Let's get back to the Bengals and just some things that you saw over the game. The one thing that had been getting significantly better over the past few weeks was the run game, and the run game was non-existent this week. They averaged 2.5 yards a carry. The interior line really got pushed around. That's the recipe to slow down this team.
Right.
Is if you push back the interior line, the center and guards, to shrink Joe Burrow's vision when he drops back and make him scramble. Because when you come around, obviously, then you don't see it as much, and you can focus.
Step up in the pocket.
Right. But when they're pushing back the interior line and the run game's not there, that was why we couldn't move the ball in the first half. So the run game needs to keep progressing. And then secondly, with the pass rush, and I've been on this for a while, I think the Bengals defense is one of the best in the league. That's obviously shown. I think that the pass rush is the key to opening up, unlocking all of the Bengals' defensive possibility. And with Sam Hubbard out, there was no pass rush in the first half against the Bucs, and they were eating our secondary alive. Second half, come out, you get a pass rush, all of a sudden the secondary plays a lot better, and those wide open plays, the big chunk plays that the Bucs were getting in the first half were non-existent. With Sam Hubbard being out and with the secondary
I hear what you're saying.
Being hurt as they are, we're gonna see what this depth looks like for the Bengals, and that's the one thing that was nice about this Bengals this past year is the depth on the defensive side by getting Dax Hill, getting Cam Taylor-Britt had, made this defense so much better. But now we're really gonna see just how deep Lou Anarumo's defense can be.
Well, you already heard me. You already know my thoughts about the whole running game with Mixon and P. Ryan, and I think that maybe it's just a coincidence that Mixon comes back, P. Ryan takes a back seat. Next thing you know, the running game isn't what it used to be. So, and I'm not trying to crush Mixon, but I just think that sometimes P. Ryan is similar to a Derrick Henry, and I'm not trying to compare those two. I know Derrick Henry is really, really
More
good.
of a power back, right?
But yeah, a guy that just you don't want to tackle in the third and fourth quarter because you're just tired of it. And the other thing I would say about the Bengals is like their flaws, quite frankly, are the flaws of many other teams. It's not like they have something that's so bad that you're like, oh my gosh, that is going to be the detriment to us. And the only thing that I can think of that right now that would be a little bit concerning is really just the health. And it's not even like something you can control. So I wouldn't even concern myself over it or worry about it. It's just like hopefully you get how long is Hendricks out?
Dan Hoard said that he's not going to play this week. He's looking to come back for Monday Night Football with a club against the Bills. Like, obviously, he's going to be wearing a club going forward. But, yeah, hopefully to be back for Monday Night Football.
Emperor brings up the point that P. Ryan ran some in this game and he didn't do any better than Mixon. That's not – like, if you want to just box score, like, compare stats, that's one thing. What I'm trying to say is that hand the ball to P. Ryan a significant amount and then see what happens towards the end of the game. Hand the ball to Mixon throughout the game and see what happens at the end of the game. It's two different backs. They have two different styles. I just think there's times where the Bengals didn't have to do this yesterday so much because they got the ball handed to them in their own side of the field a bunch and they took advantage of it, give them credit. So they didn't have to they didn't have to have long sustaining drives. But I do think that there's some times where Zach, and I know this is easy to do with Burrow, he does abandon the run from time to time.
Right.
And that's easy to do when you got a guy
right when
there.
you give it to your most trusted player, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's when you fall back and you don't know what to do.
And to play devil's advocate, if he handed the ball off 40 times a game and Joe Burrow only had 25 passes and you lost, you'd be asking yourself, what the hell are we doing? So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. That's why players win games and coaches lose them.
Sure. The thing about Samaje that you've been on is you're saying he should get more of the snaps. I thought the recipe was good once Joe Mixon came back, to where earlier in the year Joe Mixon was taking 80% of the snaps as the running back. Since Samaje had played well and Joe Mixon's come back, it's been about 55-45 leaning Joe Mixon. I think that's the recipe that works, keeping both backs fresh. The thing that was interesting to me was just the usage of the running backs yesterday. They had Joe Mixon stepping up to block for Joe Burrow and third down plays multiple times. That's not using your players properly. Obviously, Samaje Perine's the better back to block. Secondly, they ran a shovel pass, pitch play to Samaje on the edge early in the game, and you're wondering, what are we doing? Samaje is the back that's good between the tackles.
You're doing the opposite of their skill sets.
Right. Let's get it to Joe Mixon, the elusive back, and let him shake on the outside. What are we doing? Let's get people in
You don't like
areas
pitch
to
plays
succeed.
with P. Ryan?
Right. That doesn't work a whole lot. Doesn't work very well.
King Lou. This is the take that it just stirs me up, man. And give Lou credit. I hope he basks in the glory as long as he can. And I don't know if it's as bad as I make it out to be, but I can't stand it. I'll be honest with you.
You can't stand the King Lou talk?
I just can't stand the Lou talk. It just eats me alive because it's like one of those things where I really don't think that there's a significant amount of things during that game yesterday that he does differently no matter what happens. Yes, like
came out and rushed the passer significantly better, which led to a much more limited Buccaneers offense.
I just listen. I think that the
He
players
popped the
on the
hood.
field make plays. The defensive coordinator from time to time they make a difference. Yes, but he's put on this pedestal around town, like he's the reason that the Bengals are making all these comebacks. Like he's in my opinion. Of course I'm just going through Twitter. It's like, King Lou's gonna cook.
No,
they snapped the man to the up back. No,
Like,
listen to me. They snapped the ball to the up back, and somehow, like King Lou's getting credit for the Bengals starting at their own 10-yard line. I'm just saying, like I'm not trying to be like a Debbie Downer about Lou. I just like if King Lou, if you want to call him that,
yeah, King Lou
goes somewhere in the offseason, if he becomes a head coach, I'm not worried about it. I'm just not.
Well,
they'll be good again next year.
Well, the fact that the Bengals defense is doing this with, relatively unknown names. If you ask people outside of Cincinnati to name players on the Bengals defense, they couldn't do it. They couldn't name you a single player probably. Maybe Trey Hendrickson. Other than that, I mean, a lot of people would know Eli Apple. But other than that, this defense is a bunch of relative no-names, and Lou Anarumo has this team averaging 8 points. They're giving up 8 points in the second half. That's tied with the Bills. That's tied with the 49ers. And that's tied with the Cowboys. Some would say 3 of the best defenses in the league. They're all averaging 8 points. The only team that's doing better, believe it or not, is the Denver Broncos.
All I'm saying is that I think the Bengals have a good defense, and sure, I'm not here to say that Lou doesn't have anything to do with it. Obviously, he's the coordinator. But at the same time, I'm not going to go out here and act like this is the guy, this is the man, because this is the same guy. And Bengals fans will say they don't believe this, but this is the same guy that guys wanted fired about 14 months ago.
Lou Anarumo?
What?
Who wanted Lou Anarumo fired?
Wait a minute, time out. You're telling me at the beginning of the season last year with the Bengals, people didn't want him just out on the streets?
No,
I don't think anybody wanted Lou Anarumo.
No one has ever wanted Lou Anarumo.
Well, I'll start digging him up. We'll see.
I mean, like,
I'll stand. No. I'll stand corrected if I don't later today take my time out of my day, go through Twitter. I'm going to go back about 14 months, and I'm just going to start pulling screenshots, and I'll probably have plenty. We'll see.
Well, I mean, you can find people that might not know what they're talking about, like
right. I mean, if you find
fans,
enough, if you look on Twitter, you can find pretty much about any take you want.
I'm saying a plethora of them, not just some one random fan. But
no
one
wanted Lou Anarumo fired. King Lou has been the name.
Let me ask you something.
Since the beginning of
last year. If Lou Anarumo comes down with the flu, maybe he gets COVID, he can't coach for 3 weeks. I really don't think there's that big of a difference.
The better question is, and I know a bunch of Bengals fans bring up, there's no chance that Lou Anarumo doesn't get a head coaching job this year. Is that really? Do we really think Lou Anarumo is going to get a head coaching job? What did he say?
He said you think with those big ears he'd listen better. He's mad at me. That's fine. No. You can get mad at me all you want. Bengals fans are sensitive people.
I've
come to learn that.
We are.
I've come to learn that. You bring up the fact that Tom Brady handed the ball over 4 times on their own side of the field, and next thing you know, it's King Lou.
Well, here's the thing that I want to directly address Bengals fans here. We got to have thicker skin here.
No, a lot of people are some thin skin.
A lot of people talking about that Tom said fairly good defense and are using it as like we want to get some acclaim from Tom. Like what do you need? we know the Bengals are good. Why do you need other people to justify what we know? Don't have thin skin when people say fairly good defense. Look, like I just said, the Bengals have no names, no big names on the defensive side of the ball. We don't have Aaron Donald. We don't have Micah Parsons that people are like, oh, yeah, that defense got to be good. We don't have Von Miller. But we know that what this team brings together completes a very good defense. We don't need other people's acclaim to justify what we already know. I just want to make that very, very clear. Don't be clamoring for other people to give us credit.
DJ Reader's a really good player.
DJ Reader's legit.
I actually have an argument for Trace's side.
Ooh.
Lou Anarumo is not responsible for turnovers. It's players. Players are the ones that make the play to get the turnover. Now, you could say that Lou Anarumo coached those guys up and, found the talent, scouted it out. But what we love Lou for is not the turnovers yesterday. What we love Lou for is that he's able to have a defense that doesn't score or doesn't allow a touchdown in the second half for most of the season. That he can game plan a perfect game in the second half. Like he's adaptable.
You know what he does?
That is forward thinking.
You know what Lou does?
What does he do?
You're driving down the highway. All of a sudden, your car, dunk, 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 dunk. Check engine lights coming. There's smoke coming out, so you pull off. You know what Lou does really well? He pops that hood. He pops that hood and gives it a nice little self-diagnostics check, and he figures out where the weak points, and he sees the belt's broken. He fixes the belt. He gives it a quick oil change right on the side of I-75. That's what King Lou does. He pops that hood.
I just think that it's one of those things where, again, I guess coaches will get credit when players are playing well, is what I'll say about that. And give the Bengals credit. They take advantage of those opportunities. They have time and time again. But I just don't believe that I think the guy's getting more credit than he deserves. And he'll probably get too much discredit when things are going bad as well. That's what fans do.
Yeah,
that's fair.
That's true. That's the poison of being at a job with a lot of responsibility, right? In sports is you get very little. You get the acclaim and you get the flack when things go south. Do we think Lou Anarumo is going to get a head coaching job? Because I don't think he is.
You don't think?
I think that he's a hot name in our
sphere,
our region, in our vacuum of Twitter, but. Is he being talked about with other jobs? Like, is national media talking about?
He has applied before.
He has applied.
Yeah.
He's gotten interviewed, right? I think he got an interview last year.
Yeah. I don't know how many, but I know he's interviewed for a job before. So it's not like it'd be coming out of thin air.
Right.
Yeah, I would wonder if he would want to wait for like a good spot, like for a team that has a good quarterback or.
I don't think he's that hot ticket. I don't think he's that hot ticket of a head coaching job.
Well, and the other thing too is you got to remember that the NFL is all offense now. Like,
right?
How many guys? Like, look at Matt Patricia. Like, how many guys that are defensive-minded coaches are getting jobs?
How many have been hired in the past 5 years?
Yeah.
Dan Campbell.
I mean,
is he an offensive? He's a defensive-minded coach, right?
Well, look at Patricia. Like, he's already gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest coaches of all time are all defensive guys.
But that's not the trend in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
Ever since Sean McVay, blew up how people look at coaches.
Half the league also used to run the Wildcat.
What?
I'm just saying, there's flavors of the month, sure, but I'm
right.
Not
well,
gonna,
I'm saying
I'm not going to say that Lou Anarumo is not going to get a. I know what you're trying to get at, but let's be honest. If he's worth as much as we make him out to be worth, he's going to get a head coaching job.
Right. 20 years ago, everyone hired defensive-minded coaches.
Sean McVay swung it in one direction really quickly, right?
He did.
This Sean McVay guy came out of nowhere.
Kyle Shanahan, Zach Taylor, Matt LaFleur,
right?
All these offensive-minded coaches, and that's the flavor.
Yeah, and I think that people are like, I see Zimmer's name brought up. Zimmer was a pretty good head coach in my opinion.
He was. He was.
I mean, yeah, he might not have ever gone and made a big long push into the playoffs.
NFC Championship.
Yeah,
what's the NFC Championship with Case Keenum?
Yeah, I think Zimmer was a good coach.
Leader of men.
One of those difficult things with it's one of those difficult things with the NFL to where just like Peterson with Philadelphia, it's hard to keep a job unless you're in Cincinnati in the NFL.
Yeah,
it is.
You've got the leash needs to be longer than 2 years or whatever. A lot of these guys are getting 1 year. Like what's his name for the Raiders might be gone after this year, but they need a longer leash. They don't need 17 years or whatever Marvin Lewis got. So the final thing we'll say about the Bengals is about the slow starts. I can't identify why it's continually been a problem. It was a problem last year. It's been a problem this year. That it is our script, because they follow scripts to start games. Are we bad at drawing up scripts? Are we better on the fly like you do towards the end of ball games, second half, making adjustments? Are we rope-a-doping? What is going on to where every single game it has this same mentality where it seems like we are behind the 8 ball to start the game? And that was a big push to why the Bengals always want to receive to start the game, is we want to set the tone. But even it seems like when we play good teams, we are falling behind early, and I can't identify where that's coming from. And it's frustrating that it's continually been a problem year after year, or game after game rather. And that's
I'm going to sound I think that the last few times I've watched, I think Burrow's gotten off to some slow starts, man. And I don't know what the tip pass thing's about. I know people are making a big deal about that. I don't know if there's a reason to make a big deal about it yet. But Burrow, in my opinion, looked really bad against the Browns a few weeks ago. I know you guys made excuses for him and said he didn't have all of his receivers. He struggled a little bit yesterday. Every time they've lost to the Browns, it's been because of an opening drive interception.
Which is what happened yesterday.
And I just think that, but again, does it really matter? I think that Travis Steele brought this up one time during a halftime.
We're going to a good coaching
press conference.
Travis
Steele's the guy you lean on when you need the best advice possible.
That's true.
And he said the most overrated thing in sports is the halftime score. So I don't know if there's a huge deal to be made
Steelisms
about that situation. But I do think that there's got to be some cause for concern about the tip passes. Now, I don't know enough about football to know exactly what that is. You could obviously argue that the quarterback could be taller, which is what most people do. But I think it has something to do with the linemen knocking guys' hands down or making sure they position their hands when they're blocking. And again, I could be way off base here. But I've heard people talk about how linemen, making sure the way you block will make it to where guys can't jump at the last second.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it, but there is this weird phenomenon going on where there's these tip passes and they're causing some interceptions.
Oh man, MK's getting at you for the Travis Steele quote. I jumped in. You like to jump in on these Bengals Twitter spaces and give them a lot of times great knowledge. But I jumped in on Friday night to a Xavier Twitter space, and I was asked point blank who I think Georgetown should hire if they get rid of Patrick Ewing. And man, the reaction I got when I said Travis Steele and Wes Miller was incredible. It was about as good of a reaction as you possibly could imagine. Those Twitter spaces are a blast.
Yeah, they were down for like 12 hours because Elon took them down.
Here's the thing about that I think is funny with the chat sometimes. Like, people think I'm being serious right now. That's what's lost on me. It's the same types of people that watch Tracy Jones, and then they close the browser and they're like, I can't believe Marty Brennaman's gonna call a game for the Cyclones. That's where we're at sometimes with folks, but that's here nor there. I'll let them believe that I love Travis Steele if they think that.
All right, let's look into the NFL playoff picture, and
Hurst is missing, by the way. Billy brought up a good point. Hurst is a great player.
Yeah, he's good.
I think he's a really good player.
Yeah,
he's been missing.
Well, what was you guys made fun of me last week because I said that if the Bengals, I think Sean over here made fun of me because I said if the Bengals probably aren't going to re-sign Tyler Boyd just because it's a cap thing, and I said, all right, well if we're not going to re-sign Tyler Boyd, let's get another weapon early in the draft. And he laughed. He's, oh, you guys are so spoiled. And I was like, I'm sorry. I mean, I've seen what happens when the Bengals have 3 or 4 targets that are all relatively useful with the 3 receivers and Hayden Hurst, and I want to see that continue.
Hayden Hurst was a great upgrade.
Great upgrade over CJ Uzomah. No doubt about it. Do you still believe that the NFC is better than the AFC? Is that still a take that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, like when you first brought up the take, I said, well, we'll see. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and argue it.
I mean, it really just, I don't know if there's a huge difference. I just think that there's a few teams in the NFC that are just nightmares to handle.
Eagles and 49ers are probably the two best teams
you just don't
in
want
the
to play.
NFL.
You don't want to play those teams in the playoffs because, a lot of times I also think in the playoffs when there's pressure-mounted situations, I would lean on the team to win the game that's more physical more times than not. And you're not going to find two more physical teams than the Eagles and the 49ers.
Yeah. I brought this up last Friday. I brought it up multiple times. We sat here, all these sports shows talked about, man, are the Eagles the best team in the league? Are the Eagles the best team in the league? And they have just blown that conversation. I mean,
How sad is it going to be? And I'm not forecasting this to happen, but would it just be a gut punch come March, and you turn around and you look, and the Eagles lose one game all year, and they just steamroll everybody in the playoffs, and you're just like, yeah, we probably should have seen that coming,
right?
But we just don't.
The Eagles,
they did struggle with the Bears yesterday.
You want to talk about a team that the Eagles remind you of? You remember how good that Panthers team was a few years ago?
Cam Newton,
15-1, had MVP running quarterback, steamrolled everybody in the regular season, get to the postseason, still winning games pretty handily, and then losing the Super Bowl, never make it back.
That was my main message last week with the Bengals in the playoffs. It's like, and I'm not saying that I think the Bengals' chances of getting a 1-seed are slim to none. Genuinely,
the Chiefs losing, got to win out, which they're 3 tough games.
I don't think you win out.
Right,
I just don't. Now, having said that, would you have told me they were going to go whatever it is 6 or 7-0 since the Browns? I would have said no. But here we are. So I'm not saying that that's out of the question. I just think that the AFC side of things,
the AFC has more depth than the NFC. There's no
definitely.
doubt about it.
Right. Put all the ping pong balls in the hopper or whatever you want to say. Take every AFC team that's going to make the playoffs, spin it around, pull a name out, and as long as it doesn't say the Jags or the Titans on it that won the AFC, literally, that's the only two, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I could see that.
Even the Ravens?
Good point.
Right, even the Ravens.
With the Lamar, honestly, if Lamar got hot for a few weeks, I think the Ravens could.
Right.
Yes. Now, that's probably – they're right there on that borderline, though.
I sat here on this show, and you guys have been long stands of the Jaguars and the Lions. You obviously put the future in before the year for what, 6.5 wins?
No, it wasn't. It was when you were gone. We were really.
Well, you put one in before the year for the Lions. For the
Lions, I had a future
over winning. That already hit.
That hit. Yep.
That hit, and then you guys, while I was gone, put a bet in for both of them to make the postseason. I sat here on Friday, our last show, and told you guys, I was like, I don't think either one of these teams are going to make the postseason. And their chance to make the postseason both doubled this weekend by winning games that they probably shouldn't have won.
Can we talk about the fact that, and not very long, but chat, Trevor Lawrence is starting to look like a guy that can play some football, man. It just took our good friend Urban Meyer, friend of the show. It just took him getting out of the way a little bit down there in Jacksonville, and they got things rolling.
Colin Cowherd actually had a funny tweet about he said, you watched Josh Allen magic last night, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Herbert wizardry today. Then you turn on Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. It's just a completely different sport at times. Isn't it funny watching these, even these good teams like teams that win consistently, like the Titans, or these other physical teams,
right?
And you watch them play, and it's just a muddy mess.
I was watching the Commanders and the Giants play last night.
Muddy mess.
And I was just waiting for them to show a mirror image of Mick Cronin standing on both sidelines with a headset on. That's what it felt like.
Right.
It was just like, this is so ugly and disgusting. There's rock fights. There's people throwing rocks at each other everywhere. Nobody can score. And then you look up and you're like, oh, both these teams are going to make the playoffs.
And then you watch what Josh Allen does in a blizzard. And you're like, man, this guy doesn't even look like he's playing the same sport. You watch Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, any of these top-tier quarterbacks, and it truly blows you away how much better, having the guy. I mean, everyone, you guys always say there are 11 guys play on the field, and that's true. There's no doubt about it. But more often than not, one guy If there's one guy that ever controls a win
Bengals
or
fans,
loss.
and you can put it in the chat. You can put it just a simple number in the chat. This isn't a knock on the Bengals by any means. Maybe it's just more of an appreciation for Joe Burrow. If you took Jacoby Brissett right off the Browns and you put him on the Bengals, and you took Joe Burrow off the Bengals and you put him on the Browns, what's the Bengals' record?
Bengals' record is not as good as the Browns. But I don't think the Browns' record is probably like.
This was more about the Bengals. I guess I shouldn't have said where Joe Burrow went, but I was just meant like if you took Jacoby Brissett and put him on the Bengals, they win how many games?
And they're probably like 5-9 instead of 10-4, right now.
Wow, you only think they win 5 games?
But I think if you put Joe Burrow on the Browns, they're probably still like a 10. I don't think they're like a 12-2 team, but I think they're sit around 10-4. What about that stat that they brought up? Speaking of Tom Brady and as bad as he played yesterday, what about the stat that they brought up? When he was 6-7, it's the first time since 2002 that he had lost 7 games in a season. That is the Bengals went 10-7 last year.
I know.
And Tom Brady had not done that in 20 years. Had not lost 7 games.
Had not lost. I thought it was he had never lost 8 games.
Okay, that's what it was. But had never had more than 7 losses.
Yeah,
it's mind-blowing. Just shows, I mean, he has his haters. He's deserved some haters. He deserves a lot of claim. He gets more praise than haters these days. But, man, when you list his accomplishments, it really is just jarring how good he has been in a league that has been incredibly well-rounded through that time. But, guys, as we know on this show, I constantly have things to do on Sundays with my in-laws. And I had to set up a nativity scene at St. Joe's Church during what has been described to me as the greatest soccer game ever. Some people, including my boss, guy, man, I host this show with, said it's top 3 sporting event of his life. And I was making it. I didn't see a second of it. And you know what? I'll be honest. I mean, if you asked me to trade, if I could watch the World Cup game or the Bengals game, even if the Bengals lose, I'd make that trade 10 out of 10. Oh, no. I don't regret missing that World Cup game.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I would trade the Bengals. I just think all things considered,
even the Bucs game, even the
game not the way it turned out, but like a loss.
Yeah, that's so.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not trying to be like petty or even over the top about this. We have
this foot right here.
You have to do something, Reed.
I don't.
You have to do something.
See, here's the thing: is like I said, I didn't care if I was going to be watching that game. It would have just been sitting on my couch drinking coffee or anything like that. If you would have asked me to do anything over watching that World Cup game, and I know I missed a fantastic, perception changing of a sport game. Because, I have a very low perception of soccer, and you watch it and go, this is incredible. I don't regret missing it. I'll put it that way. No,
that's fair. I mean, Paul, this is how I would fashion that. It's the same concept. It's the same concept of this, and I can understand where he's coming from because he doesn't understand what he missed in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if you've never been to Ruby's or you've never been to if you've never had an elite steak. And you like steak, but you never had an elite steak, then you're like, I'm not missing a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
It's just not a big deal. Until you have it, and then you're like, well.
It's funny you bring that up because
maybe I was missing something all along.
There's been multiple times where I've gone to make reservations at Ruby's, and I've taken just a peek, just a gander at the menu and saw that I'm going to be spending $75+ on a steak, and I said, I'll go somewhere else.
No, Reed. You get that Freddy salad to start things off. You mix in a soup.
You're selling me Ruby's on a salad? All right, good start.
Yeah, well, again, you haven't had the Freddy. And you mix in a soup, and you get that steak. Maybe you get the steak burro with a little seafood taste into it too. Oh, man. See, that's a great analogy, Trace. I'm glad you brought that up.
That is true.
Is it not? I mean, Paul, you're obviously a soccer.
Had to set up a nativity scene.
You appreciate soccer, right? You appreciate soccer for what it's worth. Yeah, you both do at that table. I was watching that game yesterday, and it started off very much like Reed said. Just had coffee. Really wasn't all into it. I mean, I was watching it as a pure just it was on TV type thing. And then as it grew on, it's like, okay, I'm starting to understand the legacy of Messi. I'm starting to understand, like, this, he's never won this before. It's like the only thing that you could say that he doesn't have. So how much of a weight that is on his shoulders, probably, he would never admit it, but that's probably an enormous amount of weight that he was carrying. And then on top of that, you have a whole nation that is their main sport. It'd be like, imagine America playing in a World Cup where there's actual real American football being played everywhere. And for whatever reason, we've just never won that sport. Now we all know that wouldn't be the case, and I was like, I started to grow into this. I started thinking, like, I was getting emotionally invested, and they go up 2-0, and then you supposedly have the best player in the world on the other side, Mbappe, and he finds a way to tie it. And it's like the best comment I've ever heard a color analyst say, genuinely, is like when the game was tied 2-2 and it was getting down towards the later end of I think it was like right around maybe the 60th to 70th minute or something like that. Yeah. And he's like, if you're tuning in for the first time, this is your first time ever watching soccer or whatever term you use, he's like, it's always like this. I mean, that humor in and of itself was like, I'll never forget that line. I was like started laughing out loud. But no, it was a top 5 sporting moment in my life, maybe top 3, just because of the magnitude I felt from watching it. And
do you think
the way it ended, he won. Like I hate PKs, by the way, but outside of that, it was great.
Yeah.
Did you get that? If you could put that picture up, I want to show them.
I uploaded in the drive.
I've got to show them what I missed or what I was doing while we missed the World Cup, because it was worth it. Wait till you see this picture. But I'll say this. About broadcasters. You think they were nervous? I mean, if really like 1.5 billion people are watching, I guess there's different sport because they wouldn't all be watching the English broadcast then.
MK's been on my ass all chat long.
MK has been.
MK is one of those guys that I understand. You maybe don't see
Michael Kors.
See my perception on things. What I'm trying to explain to you is, in my lifetime, and it might be number 1 theoretically, that will be a top 3 iconic sporting moment of my lifetime. If not the biggest thing. I'm not saying to me personally. I'm saying I got to witness something that genuinely could be argued when I'm 400 years dead. They will talk about it. They're not going to talk about any Super Bowls.
Trace, there is no, like, American people, people watching this, American culture can be obtuse about it, whatever. In a worldwide scale, when you want to talk about the history of sports and the legacy of sports, what happened yesterday in that World Cup final will be talked about more so than anything that ever happens in America. Beyond, like, Super Bowls are irrelevant compared to what happened yesterday in Qatar. I mean, it's hard to put into words. Half the world watched that.
Right.
And I know Americans don't want to hear it, and I'm not going to try and argue.
I didn't watch it.
Well, MK said that, and I quote, "Who's they? No American will remember it in a year."
I mean, see.
So here's what I was told one time in my life, and I'm being honest when I say this. I was told, Trace, don't start arguing with stupid people because they'll drag you down, and the next thing you know, you'll be on their same level. So I'm not going to discuss the fact that the World Cup is not going to be talked about in this country in a year. It very much will be. In fact, it'll be talked about in this country, in amongst soccer fans, forever.
Did you see Times Square? I mean, Times Square looked like. I mean, it was.
I do have a funny question about the World Cup, and this is more of like a society thing with America. You seen the drone shot of Argentina that you showed? Do you guys think that if the United States would look exactly the same if they were playing in a World Cup final? I would say they would.
Yes.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Where?
Like Times Square would be.
Times
Square would be rocking.
Hear me out on this. What if they got like a massive jumbotron right there on the? Why am I drawing a blank right now? Right there at the courtyard where the presidential inaugural address is, right in front of the.
The mall.
Yeah, the mall.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be the place.
Yeah.
Just a humongous
or
line. Or
Grant Park, Chicago.
Well, it would be all over the place.
Yeah, there'd be watch parties everywhere. Where there wasn't a watch party was St. Joseph's Church, where there was a nativity scene being set up, and boy, did it look good. It looked great, Trace.
Yeah, I don't like soccer at all. I really don't. In fact, I used to make fun of soccer when I was a kid. I used to tell my parents that it was a huge waste of land every time I seen a soccer field. And I, to a certain extent, still feel that way from time to time. I don't go to FC Cincinnati games. I'm not interested in them. But I'm at least not naive enough to understand that I just seen something that is arguably one of the best things that I've seen.
And you know the other thing too, which is why there was so much drama yesterday, and this goes back to what the American comment always is about soccer, is you knew that in the 88th minute when Mbappe tied that match with the penalty kick, you knew we were going to see somebody win, right? Like it wasn't going to draw at 2-2, and we're sitting there like, oh, man, like we just watched the two best players in the world right now, Mbappe and Messi, and it's just going to end in a draw 3 minutes later after Mbappe scored one of the most incredible goals you'll see in a World Cup final. We were like, no, we have another half hour of this and then potentially PKs. Like, and again, that goes back to the same comment I always make.
You know what's crazy? I haven't even seen a highlight. I haven't even across my Twitter feed, TikTok feed, nothing.
Steve is not telling the truth in the chat. He's lying out of his teeth. Do you see the?
I did see the front row.
Steve, Steve, let's be honest. If we had to sit down and watch that soccer game yesterday, or any WNBA game in the history of mankind, you are watching the soccer game, dude. You are.
Yeah, it could have been 0-0 and still probably.
I mean, come on. The WNBA that's low.
Oh, man.
Let's not go that low.
Oh, man. All right. Wheel lunch. What we got on the docket, guys?
I don't know. What do we have? Throw something quick.
In fact, right now, I bet Steve.
Yeah, let's do McDonald's, Wendy's.
Steve, if you live in Cincinnati, you couldn't tell me the 3 WNBA teams that are closest to you right now.
That's a
maybe
good,
even 2.
That's a good question.
Wow, actually,
Chicago Sky, gotta
Indiana.
be
Indiana.
The
Fever. That's all I got for you.
Chicago Sky gotta be close. There's no Ohio WNBA team.
No.
Does Detroit have one?
Oh yeah, like we're gonna believe people in the chat. They're just literally a tab away from Google.
New York Liberty.
Brutal.
Man, by the way,
have you ever? I genuinely have not. Have you ever watched? More than 30 seconds of WNBA
the highlights are all I get. Highlights on Sports Center.
I watch.
I'm not talking about highlights. I'm saying like literally the game's on. You watch it.
Well, if it's on, like you're at somewhere to eat and they just have ESPN on, and that's where it's on, then yeah.
We gotta shut the chat down.
Oh no.
I'm trying to think here.
Golly, we need a wheel of lunch.
Taco
we
Bell,
need a fast.
Wendy's.
Jocko's. The Jocko's on the list.
Oh,
and then all 8
man.
By the way, Paul.
What?
You ready? You ready? First NHL game for both of us,
right?
First
NHL game for both Reed and I.
Me and Paul sitting rinkside.
Ringside, baby.
You guys are big time.
Ringside.
Reed told me
not everyone could go to the Betfred suite and watch every Bengals game.
Reed told me like 3 months ago, hey, Paul, I want to see a Stars game this year. Found the Stars game, threw it on the calendar, and made it happen.
And that's what you do. You
came through.
You don't talk about it. You be
also,
about it.
The Real Spirit Cat brought up the tweet that I put out, that meme. Did you see that meme I put out from where it's like, you'll never forget where
you put that out every
yeah, I think maybe the Real Spirit Cat like hadn't seen that before, but that's kind of a shtick because I tweeted that last year after you remember the Chargers game, the last game of the season, where if it tied, it would have gone to. And everybody was like being so dramatic, and
we actually talked about that outside the
office.
office.
and everybody was like, "Oh my God, like this is one of the greatest NFL games of all time." Well, I like earnestly tweeted that, and then like
joking
20 minutes later realized, "Oh my God, this is the stupidest." But I didn't delete it, and then my roommates from college did the like make it a quote thing. So now anytime there's a great game, I just throw that out there.
It's going back to that game. You remember when there was all that debate about whether they should just because if they tied, both teams would make the postseason.
Right.
Whoever won got in the postseason. So if they tied,
and the Steelers would have been out.
Yeah, if they tied, they would have both made it.
Yeah.
So people were like, should they just like shake hands in the middle of the field and just knee it out until the end of the game? And we joked about it like they played regulation, they got it. When you end regulation at a tie, they should have said right there like, all right, we tried to make this competitive, guys. Like let's go into this overtime and just Like, we did our best. We did the honorable thing and played this game, but it didn't just ended up that we are tied at the end of regulation. Let's just knee this thing out and both go to the postseason.
I think every time I've tweeted that meme, which is like 4 or 5 times, I've been sitting in the same spot.
What is Izzy's?
In my basement.
Izzy's is they have Reuben's. It's a sandwich place. I don't think there's an Izzy's around here. We ready for wheel?
We have a
Izzy's like a chain?
tier wheel today.
Yeah.
Izzy's is a chain?
Potato pancakes. Happy Hanukkah.
Also, before everybody leaves here, we're going to do our sports betting 101.
That's true.
Here.
Yeah.
On the other, so as soon as this ends, as soon as we do the wheel lunch, Reed and I are going to get up there and do for Not Too Picky, we're going to do our sports betting 101.
I don't have an update
How
on
have
our
I not had
bowl.
Izzy's if like a bunch of people are saying they've had Izzy's?
Yeah, it's really good. There's none around here. I mean, there's like the closest one's probably like 30 minutes away, 25 minutes away. All right, what we got? Oh man, can you throw one more in there? Can you throw,
we got to throw
up?
something else in.
We can't get 25% chance of going to Jocko's.
You can throw White Castle in there.
MK, we only talk Muskies after in the Xavier 247 Twitter Spaces. It's when we really get Muskies talking.
Yeah, we'll talk. Yeah, it's true. Wednesday. Haven't beaten Seton Hall in 4 years since Chris Mack was the coach.
Chris Mack, big
at home.
Big Hoo Day.
He was there.
He goes to every game, I'm pretty sure.
All right.
He watched the AFC Championship in Ross, Eli Sports Bar. Go ahead, let's roll.
I'm out in the boonies.
Matt did?
I'm out in the boonies, AJ. I can't be out in the boonies.
You put White Castle over all 8 up. All right.
AJ, I am sitting in the largest city outside of Cincinnati and Dayton in Southwest Ohio.
8th biggest city.
8th biggest city in Ohio. I mean, what are we talking about?
Oh, no.
Oh, we should have put Gold Star free, or it's the 3-way, right?
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Logo.
Some people are saying Gold Star's better than Skyline.
We don't have a Gold Star around here, though.
There's one on the west side and the east side. Come on.
The east side shut down. Oh, no.
All right. Jocko's Taco Bell, baby. Jocko's likes to be a finalist. It's been on the list twice, and it's got down to the
Christmas
final
colors.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Okay, it looks like we're going
Taco Bell. It's good.
All right.
It's good save.
Bell
All right.
Sports betting 101. Good show, guys.
Yeah, good show. Packers playoffs
Start tonight. Yeah, the road to the playoffs start tonight.
Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers?
I'd like to see Jordan Love play a little bit more, but he's not going to because you just can't do that, I guess. That's just not the thing that you do when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, and I love Aaron Rodgers, but I think he's right there on the same boat as Tom Brady. I hope they go out together.
Did you hear that Sammy Watkins released?
Well, there might be something to that.
30 minutes ago.
They just released him on the day of the game.
Yep. Packers are releasing wide receiver Sammy Watkins. He'll go on waivers.
How's that work? Do you walk into the facility and the doors are all locked, and you're like, I have a game today. And they're like, no, you don't. Here's your stuff.
Cutthroat business. All right.
You need another weapon down in Cincinnati. He's available.
Yeah, we do, don't we? Let's get another one.
Bring him on. Practice squad.
All right. Well.
Till Wednesday for us.
Yeah.
Tomorrow for Tom.
I'll see you guys in about 30 seconds.
Right. Gray-haired Cincinnati Bengals announcer who doesn't like the Bengals.
He doesn't like Ohio State players either.
We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody.
See you guys.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, and if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Sweeney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Sweeney, the original used car superstore.
Welcome into Not Too Picky. Today is December 19th, 2022, and I'm very excited for today's episode because this is something that we've talked about doing for a few months now since Not Too Picky has been going on, and it's a sports betting 101. Paul Fritchner, Reed Mouse, Casey McAllister, we are doing this live on YouTube right now, so if you're in the chat and you have some questions, what does sports betting look like? What does all this stuff mean? How do I read a line? Anything like that, put it in the chat. We'll answer it. Today, we are just going to do the basics, the absolute basics today. If you live in Ohio, you know that sports betting is coming to the state of Ohio on January 1st at midnight. You'll be able to bet on anything you want at midnight on New Year's Eve. On New Year's Day, it'll be, boom, right there for you, right on your phone. It'll be launched. It'll be the casinos if you want to go in person. But we are here today just to make sure that on January 1st, you can have the base level of what you need to know for January 1st. Okay, Reed, here are the 5 things that I want to make sure. Casey, can I get Reed's microphone here real quick?
I want to hear that
there we go. Here are the 5 things that we are going to cover today. Now, we'll answer the questions.
Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we're going to do, and Reed's going to help me out with this. Casey, if you have any questions, because I know you're new to it too, you've gotten a lot better at this as the season has gone along, but I know that you're kind of getting into the swing of things too. So the 5 things that we're going to talk about today are the absolute 5 basics. There are some other basics that we'll get to on Thursday's show. We're not sure yet if we're going to have a show next Monday, but then next Thursday, if we have a show, we'll branch out. And, of course, into the new year, we'll always be throwing tips and things like that in. But what is a spread? What is a total? What is a money line? What is a parlay? And what is a unit? Not like a unit. Not like a size.
You're a unit.
Well, I could use a few more pounds to be a unit.
A little too tall. Could use a few pounds.
Twitter bio, baby. Bob Seeger. What is a unit? All right. We're going to start with a spread. Mm-hmm. What is a spread? And you hear people talk about, I'm going to bet the game on Sunday. I'm going to bet the game. And you say, I'm going to take the Bengals on the spread. What does that mean? Casey, flash the graphic up on the screen. This is a screenshot taken directly from DraftKings Sportsbook of what it looks like. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, what in the world am I looking at? I'm looking at minuses. I'm looking at pluses. I'm looking at team. What am I looking at here? And you're just overwhelmed. We're also going to explain this because if you're listening in podcast form, we want to make sure you're following along. But you see there on the left side of the column, that is the spread. And what the spread is it makes the game more entertaining than just saying who is going to win. Right. Because you'd think in theory that if the Chiefs are playing the Texans, it's a lot easier to say the Chiefs are going to win the game than it is to say how much are they going to win the game by. So that is what the spread is. It is Las Vegas's way of asking the question, how much do you think this team is going to win the game by? Okay? So now, if you look at the spread and you look at the top there, you look at the Bills and the Bears. That's the first game on Saturday. The Bills right now are at -8.5. That means if you see the minus right next to that number, the first number, the white number there in that column, and this is the same layout that you'll see whether it's on FanDuel or any other app that you use, it's always the spread, the total, and then the money line, okay? The spread at -8.5 for the Bills. That means if you see that little minus sign, that the Bills are the favorites. That's the easiest way to read that you see the Bills are the favorites in the game by 8.5 points.
So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
What is with the half points?
Okay. A half point means that you can't, what we call in betting, push on a game. Because if the game was set at 8 points, if the Bills were, say, -8 instead of 8.5, if the Bills won by 8 points, going back to the soccer discussion,
right,
you wouldn't win or lose. You would just get your money back. Now, sometimes in sports betting, you'll see it. Sometimes the games will be at a whole number, but way, way, way more often than not, it'll be at a half number because obviously you can't end a game in a half number. You can't score a half a point in football or in basketball. You can't score a half a point.
So I think one question that, and forgive me if I'm jumping the gun here, a lot of people new to betting, what is, you see -110 up on the board. Walk us through that.
Okay, that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So if you see that the Bills are -8.5 and the spread is 8.5, the spread for one team is always the same as the opposite spread for the other team. So if the Bills are -8.5, the Bears are +8.5. If the Bills are the favorites and they are at -8.5, that means to what we call cover the spread, they have to win by 9 points or more for you to win your bet. On the flip side, if the Bears lose by 8 or less or win the game, then you would win if you bet the Bears. That's what you call covering. So if the Bills win by 9 on Saturday against the Bears, if they win by 9 or more, that means they cover. Okay, so now to your question, Reed. What is that green number, the -110?
Yeah.
That number is the odds. So if you click on, and we can't do it here because this is a screenshot, but if you click on -8.5, it will populate a little window, and you'll be able to punch in whatever it is, $10, $20, $1,000, whatever you want to type in for the amount of money that you bet. -110 is your standard gambling odd. It is always, if you see something at -110, that basically is, it's not even money, but that is essentially what Vegas is saying the standard line is.
So forgive me if I'm wrong here, but a general way of looking at this is if you see a minus next to a number, that is how much money you'd have to bet to win $100.
Yes. So sports betting is done based in $100 units, and we'll get to units in a minute. Units is just essentially how much money your standard bet size is. Sports betting is done in $100 increments. Now, you don't have to bet $100. You could bet a penny.
Right.
You could bet $1. You could bet whatever you feel most responsible and comfortable with betting on a certain game. But when you look at something that says -110, that means that if you bet $100 on the game, you would win about $90. If you see odds, which are different than the spread, when you see that minus sign, and I know this sounds a little confusing, and we're going to walk you through it here again. If the white number in the spread has a minus next to it, that is the spread of the game. That is different than the minus sign in the odds of the game. The odds of the game being at -110 just is your standard unit size. The greater that minus sign is for a game, so if it gets down to like -200, -300, you can see that the Bills there over on the money line are -365. The money line just is, are the teams going to win or not? We'll get to that in a second. But
so what I'm reading is,
yes,
to win $100, you have to bet 110 on the Bills to cover.
That is exactly right. That's exactly right, Reed. So the spread is what the team has to cover for you to be able to win your bet. If you bet on the Bears this weekend against the Bills and they lose by 8 points or less, or they win the game outright, then you would win your bet. If you bet on the Bills, the only way that you win your bet is if the Bills win by 9 points or more. Okay? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
If this does not make sense to anybody in the chat, if you want me to clarify anything, if you want me to keep talking through anything with the spreads or with the odds, just put it in there. We're reading all the comments as they come in.
So the plus is how much you'd win on a $100 bet. So if you see plus 300, like the Bears money line, if you bet $100 on the Bears to win outright, they'd win $300.
Exactly. All right, let's look at the total now. And this is where the layout of some of these books in the United States gets a little confusing for people that are just starting out, but we'll talk you through it. The total is it's what's also known as the over-under. So if you hear people talk about what's an over, I'm going to take this game over 41 points or under 41 points, that's the total amount of points scored in a game. So the way that this is laid out, you kind of look at this and you think to yourself, does this mean that the Bills have to score more than 41.5 and the Bears score under? No. If you look at the total, that is just the total amount of points that you think are going to be scored in the game. Is it more than 41.5 points or less than 41.5 points? It is as simple as that. The U is under, the O is over. Can't be any clearer than that. So if the Bills and the Bears, if the Bills and the Bears play a game that's 22-20, that's 42 points, you win your bet if you bet on the over. If they play 21-20, you're out of luck. That's under 41.5, and you would lose your bet.
I feel like totals are a good gateway into sports betting.
They are a fantastic gateway into sports betting, Reed, because they're an easy way for you to understand one simple thing that you need to do watching the game, how many points are going to be scored. Casey, do you have any questions so far?
No, so far you're doing a great job.
Okay. So the total of that Bills and Bears game, you can see here, it's at 41.5. Now the Seahawks and the Chiefs underneath, two teams that score more points than maybe the Bears might, that's at 49. That's that's over a touchdown more than the Bills and the Bears. The totals fluctuate based on what Vegas thinks the amount of points are going to be scored in that game, how good the offenses are, how good the defenses are. That's everything that goes into it. Okay? Anything else, Reed, that comes to your mind?
Nope, not for totals.
Okay. Now we're going to move over into the money line on the right side. The money line is the easiest bet on this screen to understand. The money line bet is simply who you think is going to win the game. So if you take the Bills at minus 365, that means that you think the Bills are going to win the game. Doesn't matter if they win by 1 or win by 9. If you bet on the Bills on the money line, it would take a lot more money. You have to risk more to win the same amount. But if the Bills win, you win your bet.
Right.
If the Bears win, you win more money by risking less because they are the underdog. So when people talk about are they the favorite or are they the underdog, I talked about it on the spread. The other way to look at it is just who has a minus sign next to their name on the money line. Any questions there?
No,
Reed?
I think you're explaining it perfectly.
No. Casey, any questions there? Now, here's the thing. Reed and I have been doing this for years. It's easy for me to look at this and say, okay, it makes a lot of sense to me. It looks like an Excel sheet. But for anybody that's looking at this for the first time and doesn't understand, if you have a question, put it in the chat.
So when a bettor, in slang jargon, as we use a lot in this industry, when a bettor says, I'm going to take the Bears plus the points.
Yes.
What does that mean?
If you're going to take the Bears plus the points, that would mean in this case where the Bears are plus 8.5, that if you bet on the Bears, you would need the Bears. You would have an 8-point cushion.
You're taking their spread.
You would take their spread.
Okay.
You would have an 8-point cushion on the Bears. That's exactly right. You just take the Bears plus the points. Now, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, Vegas, you can keep the points. And that just means that you're going to take the underdog on the money line. Sure. And you say, you don't need the points. I'm just going to take the Bears to win straight up. But we don't need to get, once you have a command on all this, that makes a little more sense to you.
Okay.
Here's the other thing that I want to make sure we talk about. A parlay. Parlays in the sports betting industry are what you would call a lottery ticket. Now, some parlays are better than others. Like if you're betting a 2-leg parlay, that's That's not the worst thing in the world. I'm not going to say it's smart all the time because you're not going to win parlays. You're going to lose parlays way more often than you're going to win them. But a 2-leg parlay where you're pretty confident in a couple of teams that could win, like we did the company raised parlay a few weeks ago on Tennessee or on Georgia and then the Bengals. It's not the worst thing in the world.
So what is a parlay?
A parlay is where you put multiple bets together on one bet slip, and everything that you put together in a parlay has to hit for you to be able to win that bet. So let's say, Casey, if you fly back the screen here, let's say here you think that all the favorites are going to win. So the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bengals are all going to win on Saturday afternoon. You would put the Bills, you would click on the money line, or you could do it on the spread, however you felt like it. But let's just say at a money line parlay, you would click the Bills at minus 365, you would click the Chiefs at minus 410, and you would click the Bengals at minus 180. What would happen in a parlay is, as opposed to just betting a straight bet, which is just one thing, if you bet on all three of those things, the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Bills would all have to win for you to be able to win your money. The thing is, though, because that is tough to do, your odds are better. So people see it, they get these big, wide eyes, and they think to themselves, oh, man, I want to bet a parlay because the odds are better. Well, they're not better, but they're larger. And because the odds are larger, I'm going to win more money if I think that all the favorites are going to win anyway. But Reed, what are the odds on those three favorites just straight up winning the game?
So if you have the Buffalo Bills at minus 390, the Chiefs at minus 450, these odds have changed. I'm looking at the sportsbook actively. And the Bengals minus 190, all on the money line. That is a 3-pick parlay for plus 134 odds. So you'd win $134 on a $100 bet.
Which is not all that great on a 3-leg parlay.
No, you're needing three things to happen.
You need three things to happen to just win 1.34 times your money.
So this is where we become advisors and say that parlays, while fun, shouldn't be your main form of betting.
Generally what people do when they start betting, and this is what you'll see a lot of after January 1st.
They try to hit the home run.
You try to hit the home run. You parlay like 5 or 6 things together. Maybe you hit it once, and you think to yourself, oh, man, that's the way to go. Yep. I can't lose one of these. That what I just did was so easy, I'm going to do it again. And you're going to take 5 spreads. You're going to parlay them together. You're going to put $20 on it, which pays like $1,000. You're going to go 5-0 one day, and you're going to think to yourself, oh, man, 5-0? You mean I just got to win 5 games?
Right.
That's it? And I can win $1,000 on a $20 bet? We cannot stress enough. Casey, take that off of here, and let me speak into the people's eyes directly. Reed and I cannot stress enough that, as he said, while fun, parlays are a lottery ticket, and they are the easiest way to lose your bankroll when you are betting. They're fun. I'm not telling you that if you're on a bachelor party, I'm not going to sit up here and say I don't bet them.
No,
they're
I bet
fun.
them sometimes, yeah.
They're fun. But what you have to accept is when you bet a parlay, it is way more likely than not that you are going to lose that parlay. You see these crazy.
Well, there's a reason.
Yeah.
That these sports books, if you get on Twitter, get on social media, they are advertising all these people that are hitting these long parlays, these $10 bets that win $500,000 or $250,000. And that's because, similar to slot machines at a casino, they are the biggest moneymaker for the sports books. They lose way more than they will win you money. It's a losing bet. They're fun, and they are how you get the big bets, but they are how these sports books make their money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you start to see like the guy yesterday who had parlayed all of the major champions for the year when you had starting back with Kansas to win the men's national championship in basketball all the way to France in the World Cup. He cashed out, which we'll get into later. But it's just a crazy parlay. And you see all the ones that hit, but you don't see the millions more that lose in that time. So parlays, they're fun. You know, you go on a bachelor party to Vegas and everybody picks one leg and you sit there at the casino all day and you watch your parlay come in. Like, that's fun. I'm not telling you not to do it. What I am telling you is you need to understand that parlays, if that's the only way you bet, you're going to lose in the long run. And you might lose anyway in the long run because that's just sports betting is supposed to be a form of entertainment.
It's not a way of making money. It's entertainment.
It's entertainment. We want you to gamble responsibly. We understand as people that have done it before that when you get up there on January 1st and you see the Bengals playing on Monday Night Football and you think to yourself, oh, man, there's no way the Bengals don't cover this spread. And then you wake up on Tuesday morning and you're just so sad because the Bengals didn't cover the spread or whatever it might. Maybe the Bengals, I don't want to use that as a bad example because the Bengals have actually been the best team against the spread in the last 22 games. 19-3 in the last 22 games against the spread. Bengals have been a monster against the spread. But when you see something that says, and this goes back to the spread, if you see that the Bengals are 19-3 ATS, that means against the spread. So that would mean that the Bengals have covered 19 of their last 22 games. But just to finish that off with parlays, they're fun. We love to do it sometimes just to have some excitement like on a Saturday. The other thing I will say is never do, and this is, again, bad advice because we did it for the company raised parlay, but, again, that was more fun. If you're trying to do a parlay seriously, never do a multi-day parlay. Parlays are the best when there are like 4 or 5 games happening at the same time that you can't roll over your money. Because in the end, what you could do is just take that money, roll it all over into the next bet. It's the same odds. So a parlay is better if you have like 3 games happening in the 1 o'clock window, 3 games happening in the 4 o'clock window, and you put all 6 together. That's the most ideal time for a parlay.
Let me segue us into the final piece. I see a lot on social media, a lot of these bettors talking, I'm betting 5 units on a game. Explain that to me.
Okay. So we talk about gambling responsibly, right? A unit is how much it's your standard bet size on whatever game match you're betting on. So
it's a way to measure how much you're betting.
It is a way to measure. So if you see that Reed and I are plus 15 units on the NFL season, that would mean that if your unit size was $100, you would be up $1,500 over the course of the NFL season if you had tailed means to bet on. If you had bet every single one of the picks that Reed and I gave you, we're not up 15 units. I think Casey and I we're close, but I don't know what our official tally is. I'm just saying a unit is how much you bet on a certain game. So your unit size could be $1. It could be $5. Sharp bettors in Vegas could have a $50,000 unit. But units are a standard way to measure how good a gambler is against somebody else. Because Reed could sit up here and say, oh, man, I won $100,000 last weekend on the NFL. But he only put in one bet for $110,000,
right?
And he won $100,000. Whereas I could be sitting here with a $50 unit, and I could have won $1,000 on the NFL last week. And think about how many units you're up, like 20 units there. So it's a standard unit of measure to figure out how good you are for against everybody else, because it's not good enough to just say I'm up $3,000 more on the season than Reed is, because we might be betting different amounts of money. Anything else on units that I didn't cover?
I think that's it.
Okay.
I think you covered it all well.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. A lot of questions about pre-registering before January 1st. My recommendation is, if you have any offers, if you're getting emails, I mean, my goodness, we've seen all the billboards, we've seen the Twitter ads, we've seen everything. If you can pre-register now and get those promotions, do it. They are throwing money at you. And the other thing I will say with that is, a lot of times skeptical people will say, it seems too good to be true. There's no way they're just going to give us $100. Right. They are, because what they want you to do is just bet that right back into their system.
You do have to bet through it. Like, you can't pre-register
get $200 in free bets, and then cash out your $200 right then and there. You have to use the money. But if you bet through it, you use the $200, and you win your bet, then it's your money. Then you can do what you want with it. You have to play through it at least once in most books.
Yep. There are a lot of different apps that have. I mean, I think there's going to be 25 different apps available on January 1st. But like I said, I would recommend, because I'm sure that the apps are going to be flooded on New Year's Day, try to pre-register now. I mean, I've done it. Try to pre-register now and make sure that you're on top of everything there. Every single promotion has terms and conditions that are there. There's like the fine print terms and conditions, but there's also what they'll usually do is take you to a page where they can help you understand it in a more common man type of way.
Seth asked if crypto is the only currency you can use for online betting. I don't know if that's a serious question, but for a while when it was illegal, yes, that was typically the way that people would bet online, is using cryptocurrency through the blockchain. Don't want to get into all that, but with these apps becoming legal to Ohio, you can use real money, and you can use your money, withdraw it, deposit it as you want.
Use a debit card. If you're using credit, all that, use a debit card. Don't use a credit card. A lot of institutions hand out crazy fees. Some people will charge a recurring fee. Sometimes they'll spot it as fraud. If you're deciding between that, use your debit card. Don't use your credit card. Not necessarily for security issues, just more so it saves you some money on fees and everything else. But yeah, what you can do is it's real. It's American cash. It's real cash. This is not like going to Bovada or Bet Online or any of that where you have to cash out in Bitcoin. You're putting in $100 out of your checking account, and you're withdrawing $190 after the Bengals cover a spread. Two more things I will say. There is a difference between the money that you win and the money that you are paid out. And every app lays it out differently. DraftKings, they tell you what they're going to pay you out. FanDuel says, here's what you will win. That's on top of the money that you bet. So if you bet $100 on the Bengals spread to win $90, that means when the game ends and the Bengals have covered, you will then get back from that site $190. Okay, so you're winning 90, but you're getting back your original bet too. You're consuming $190 from the site. Just want to make that clear, because on FanDuel, you'll type it in and it'll say $100, and then in the right box, it'll say to win 90. But when they pay you out at the end, that'll be $190.
That's a good point.
We see our questions about our favorite app. We don't have a sponsorship here.
Yeah, we're working. We'll hopefully have one here soon.
So hopefully we're working on some sponsorships. There are the big ones. DraftKings, FanDuel are the big ones. They will both be in Ohio. Caesars probably has the best promotions. Not a lot of and I mean promotions as far as like a reward system. Like they offer you like Vegas trips if you're going if you bet through a lot of money. But all of them. Barstool Sportsbook will be here. Hard Rock Sport, all of them will be here.
And if we don't have a sponsor by then, we will give reviews of each app.
That's absolutely right.
We'll do that. Well, I was going to say, Sir Boy asked what hedging is. Hedging simply is betting against something that you want to happen. So a lot of people will say, I'm hedging my heart, which means, say you're a Bengals fan, you're simply betting on the other team to win, because then you're hedging your heart, saying that, all right, if we lose, then at least I win some money. A lot of people hedge parlays. Say you've got a 6-leg parlay, you've hit 4 legs, and you're already going to be guaranteed some money. So you start saying, all right, if I'm going to hedge this parlay so I win either way.
Yep. And I see AJ in the chat talking about how FanDuel has some of the best lines. AJ makes a good point there, and I don't want to overcomplicate things because I said we're doing the very basics. But if you did understand everything that we've said so far, the reason that Ohio, in my opinion, is going to be the best state to bet on sports in the entire country, better than Nevada, better than New Jersey, anything like that, is because there are going to be so many apps available to us here in Ohio that the books have to keep the lines competitive with each other. And what that means is a sports book can set whatever line they want. Generally, they're all the same.
Similar.
But sometimes they're a point off. So maybe on DraftKings, the Bills are 8.5-point favorites, but on FanDuel, they could be 7.5-point favorites. And you want to make sure that you look around and try to get the best line. But again, the more that you do this, the more that it becomes clear, okay, this is what, this is. And the one other point that I will make, because I have a friend who I have talked to a lot about this, who's new to sports betting in the last few weeks and has been complaining to me about losing a lot of money, is because he's a fan of an NFL team that generally is pretty good and generally has some massive spreads. And lately
he's a Chiefs fan.
He's a Bills fan. And they have not covered the spread a couple of the times he's bet on them, and bet on them big, because he thinks to himself, oh, well, the Bills are the best team in the NFL, and they're my favorite team.
Mm-hmm.
A standard rule of thumb for me is I never like to bet on my favorite team. Now, sometimes in bigger games like the Super Bowl, that's different. But a lot of times where novices get caught up is you think to yourself, my team, you overvalue your team, and then you lose money. And then you get frustrated because your team didn't win or didn't cover in the first place. So never betting your heart is a pretty good standard to look at it. And the other one little piece of advice, I saw Trace put this in here. This is just a general piece of advice. If you think something is too good to be true, like, why are they just a 2-point favorite? For example, Xavier against Cincinnati in the crosstown shootout. That line opened at 2.5. And everybody's thinking, oh, my goodness, Xavier is such a better team than Cincinnati. Why? They're going to win by 10 or 12 points. Well, it took some shenanigans. Xavier did cover in the end. They won by 3. But there was a very serious chance there at the end of the game that Xavier was going to lose, or Xavier was going to win that game by 1 or lose it outright. Right. And in the end, Vegas tends to know more than the average person.
All right. I think we covered 101.
I think that is the absolute overview, basic sports betting 101. I am going to bring on some professionals. I know a bunch.
We're not?
What?
We're not professionals?
Well, not according to Casey.
Okay.
Bunch of ex-professionals.
So I am going to bring on some people from Vegas, guys that work in the industry, guys that are very, very good at this, to kind of walk us through each individual sport. I'll have somebody on for college basketball, the NFL, and then as
to give tips and
NBA.
rules of thumbs when betting.
Just kind of general things to look at when you're looking at the lines. Casey, before we get out of here, with any questions, anything that we didn't cover, anything I didn't make clear enough, anything Reed and I didn't say?
No, the only thing that I'm going to say is if you don't like a game and you're just looking for a bet, don't do it.
You don't have to bet every primetime game. You don't have to bet every game you watch.
That's exactly right. That's great advice, Casey. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Well, hopefully everybody learned something today. And again, on Thursday, we'll be going into this more in depth. I know some people had questions about cash outs and how to look at lines and everything like that. We'll tell you about how we look at games on Thursday. But for now, appreciate it. And we'll see you again on Thursday.